Today, I'm gonna listen to this debate, this debate from 8 years ago about the Confederate flag because I'm Canadian and don't know anything about anything at all. It's been a nice long day and I've got a project to work on, so I think we're gonna do a little bit of multitasking. Should be fun. A little bit exciting. You want me more over here? Oh, okay. Okay. I feel like, so obviously, I don't know, if you've seen this, you've probably seen some of the snippets. There was the conversation between Chris and the other guy about the history of the Confederate flag, where it came from, and why do we defend it? Is there a logical reason to defend the Confederate flag? Is it rooted in racism or not? And what does that mean if we do display a symbol of racism and oppression and murder and genocide and rape and violence? Like, what does it mean to civil our civil society if we do not, or if we do display historical objects like that publicly and happily, proudly? Should you not be ashamed of your history of rape? Should you not be ashamed by your country's implementation? Like, how did you get to where you are right now? What's the history going back? Thousands of years. So, I don't know. All I know is Canada's got an anti-Indigenous problem, not an Indigenous problem. It's got a problem with Indigenous people. And so I understand a bit about the history of that racism, that root, and the violence that was done, although it is kind of like, it's kind of cringe to think about our government being all stoked on genocide again. Super fucking weird, you know? First you do it in the name of whiteness, and then you do it in the name of, I don't know, like, what's your definition of civility? And is it civil to be fucking murdering people all over the place? I personally don't think so. Not a fan of murder, though I do have some exceptions to the rule. I feel like most people do, or should at least. You should have some standard of who deserves to be living and who doesn't. Although I do think basing it on color of your skin or upbringing is not the thing to make your, you shouldn't base your decision on silly things. If you're like a rapist or a pedophile, I would call that the exception to the rule. But, child rapist comes in all colors. So, and it's mostly white people too. So, like, what is the parasite there? Who is the inferior? And why is it always white people doing rapey stuff? Can you stop? It's embarrassing. It's cringe. Okay, so maybe we can start this over. We're only a few seconds in. I've already caught snippets of it, which elicited thoughts out of my brain. And so here I am. It's 55 minutes and 34 seconds. I'm probably going to be in and out of listening because I do have a project which I am working on. We're going to do both. And probably stretch, because I have been sitting for too long. My heart's gonna give out if I keep talking and breathing. Let's go. On Friday morning, students of Shawnee Middle East gathered to debate the use of the Confederate flag. This was 8 years ago, and I would be interested in hearing... I keep coloring on my white pants. It's very foolish. I do wonder what the Canadian Confederate flag looks like. Like, what would be the Canadian version of a Confederate flag? Probably just the Canadian flag, right?
Alright, how's everybody doing? Yeah. Okay, so the format of this is a little bit different than what some of you may have heard.
Also, high school this is 8 years ago. 8 years ago. So we're talking 2016. Looking at this as like high school attire in 2016. We're also going to look at the demographics of this classroom. Who is the professor? Who is the teacher? Who is the one teaching? How are the conversations being had? Are they respectful? I love seeing how very high school everybody is dressed. I think it's charming. There's something charming about being dressed like a high schooler, you know? Back before. Okay, yeah, so we're talking flag discussions 2016. Who is the teacher? It's this like light-skinned black dude about to get in on the Confederate flag, high school teacher, I assume. I haven't really looked into this. Maybe they'll get into some of his background. This is a recorded or a being recorded conversation or discussion of high schoolers and their, well, we'll see how many people do get involved in the discussion and whether it turns into two white guys talking about racism or if everybody gets to be involved in the conversation and where does it go, and you know, our minds changed, our hands shaken, is there hostility that comes from the defense of our perspectives or on the way that we perceive the world and what's right and what's wrong, or our sense of righteousness when it comes to, again, you know, feelings of our connection to history and actions that were done back in the day. Lots of things to think about. Lots of things to consider. Okay, let's keep going. Blep.
It's actually going to be an open
Mr.
discussion.
Muhammad.
All right. So Robbie came to me a couple weeks back with the whole topic of the Confederate flag, which is absolutely a hot button topic right now, right? Like, especially after the situation that happened in South Carolina, you had a lot of people who were discussing, is it heritage or hatred, right? And in this school, we have people who have viewpoints on a variety of sides. So the goal of Robbie and myself is to facilitate a community where we can have an open discussion that's civil, all right? So at this point, like, we're gonna open it up. I'm gonna ask questions, and anybody in here can speak, okay? But the rules of the debate are that you have to allow whoever's speaking to finish their thought. And there's no...
This is nice. Rules of discussion, I think. I hate the words and the language and like the framing of debate because you're going in with the rock-coated mind, you know, where you're not willing to budge at the strength of another person's argument, where you come into a debate not wanting to be curious about the other side, but being very like huffy and defensive that this is my side and this is the things that I believe. And a lot of people, in my experience, who participate in debate like to trap and trick rather than have genuine engagement into the pieces that go into like nuanced conversations like the Confederate flag and its relationship to racism, or the concept of womanhood and the trans community, etc. You know, people like to use very reactive language and make reactive points, thinking that that makes their argument strong, where you just chose to have a weak argument and then crane kick your opponent, which is like not the point of human discussion. It was never the point of a dialectic, a debate. The point of a debate was never to like be better than your opposite, be better than your op. It has always been to understand the sides of each and then come to an agreement, conclusion, or disagreement, like a walk away and disagree kind of thing. But not a you're not supposed to be trying to trick your opponent into stumbling. You should be focusing on your specific points. Anyway, I appreciate the setting this up and saying, we're going to be respectful here. We're going to have a respectful conversation. This is about exploring, what do you know? What do you understand to be the reality of the world that you're in? And how do other people's opinions conflate or like conflict with that? Not necessarily conflate. Although you do end up going through, like, I feel like probably an experience of conflation when the other opinion starts to conflict with yours. You like mix up your facts as you're in transition to higher knowledge or greater intellect, I guess. That's probably the difference. Sit up straight.
There's not going to be any winner or loser. I mean, I don't think that anybody here is going to leave thinking whatever else different. Whatever you think is your opinion, and you are entitled to that opinion. But we want to keep it respectful. We don't want to get ratchet up in here. All right, we got Gandhi on the wall, for God's sakes. So what would Gandhi think if we got ratchet, right? Even though that word probably didn't exist when he was alive. So the idea of the Confederate flag for a lot of people is controversial. What I want to know is your opinion. Do you feel that the Confederate flag should be allowed to be worn or flown publicly, specifically like at a school like East? So thoughts. Anybody can open it up. I'm gonna give it to Drake Yost first though, because I know he's a opinionated young man. What are your opinions on the Confederate flag?
Okay, so the introduction is, should a flag that symbolizes a history of hate, violence, rape, genocide, murder, like literal murder, like hunting, you would hunt black people in America and fucking hang them from the trees, right? Like that's fucking strange behavior. Literally dehumanizing black people in America and turning them into animals, game to be hunted. And you know, you dehumanize black people when you get scared of them, you know, like. But that was like a fun little game that whites used to play back in the day. And you know that. Is it okay to, display an object which holds such a triggering weight to it so publicly? Like, oh, okay, so imagine back in the day when they used to, like, put heads on stakes as a warning to peasants or whatever, people who might want to uprise against the violence of an oppressive king. Putting heads on a stake and displaying them across towns is a way of showing, oh, you want to rebel? Let me show you what's going to happen. Putting a heavily weighted symbol and object out into the public, which represents this weight, that heaviness of being the target, the animal, the game, the person, the generations ended. For every 100 years, that's like at least 3 generations, right? For every 100 years that a person has been murdered for what, I guess is my question, but out of racism or whatever. For every 100 years, that's 3 generations that have been taken away from the world, not by choice, but by, like, hate, by one individual and a group of individuals, hate and violence. Should we really be displaying things that are so memorable and so iconic of violence? Or I guess the argument also might be, do we associate it with racism? I don't think we associate it with racism, which is the clip that I think that I saw. But like, an argument could be, just because you do not feel the weight of the violence and the rape of the women. I was just like, my focus is just on the sexual violence, because, like, imagine looking at a symbol of, like, something that a person interprets as a symbol of hate and violence, being like, I'm okay with showing that all over the place, and having the memory of just, like, the generations of sexual violence that your parents and their parents and your mom and her mom and her mom, and did that mom even get a chance to become a mom? I don't know. I guess he was trying to argue. Did you say his name was Drake? I think that was his name. Yeah, Drake, I believe, if I remember correctly, is of the opinion that why is it related to racism? What's the big deal? Which is okay. You know, it's okay to think those thoughts. Like, I think maybe when we frame people's opinions and reactions as ignorant, we're not necessarily wrong, but we're also not doing them or us any favors. Because people who do things which are rooted in ignorance don't know. They know better. They can know better, but sometimes they just don't. Sometimes people are just like brought up wrong. Some people just don't have the capacity to think beyond like what they perceive as the reality that is just themselves, their own mindset. I don't know what they're gonna say. I do kind of.
Absolutely. That's First Amendment right. I think that people are completely misinformed about how the flag.
Okay, so First Amendment right is like your freedom of speech. Is that what it is? I believe so. I mean, I can't argue that that is a freedom of speech, an act of free speech, to display something which holds a heavy weight of violence and rape and racism. It's okay, I'm gonna say it. It's cool if you want to fly the flag. I think it's fucking stupid, but I imagine, like, I do wonder about, like, a visceral reaction to, like, gay flags and stuff, you know? Do you feel as, like, violently triggered at a rainbow flag or, like, the new brown and pink trans flag? Like, do you feel violently angry at shit that is queer coded? Because why wouldn't we feel violently angry at shit that is like hate coded and so specifically hate coded? You know, it would be one thing if it was like fuck coexist or whatever, but it's not. It's very specifically related to, I mean, the black people are telling you, oh, this reminds me of when my great grandmother was raped. You have people telling you their history, and to be like, oh, I choose to interpret it this way so that I can fly it, knowing that other people interpret it the actual way. Interpret the flag the actual way it's supposed to be interpreted. Supposed to be. Freedom of speech. Like, technically, yes. It is technically a freedom. There's the concept that people bring up of, like, freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequence. So what are acceptable forms of consequence for displaying symbols or objects of hate and symbols or objects which have that history of hate, which people who are victims or embodiments of those reasons for hate, like, what are they entitled to? Freedom of consequence. Your free speech hurt me in a way that was emotionally, psychologically damaging. Going back, you know, like, I'm just imagining, and this, I don't want to say this out loud just in case people are like, oh, what would be fun, you fucking losers. I just cannot fathom in Canada there being proudly displayed fucking Nazi flags, you know? A big red. That like violent big red. And do you know how big flags are? Flags are gigantic. Flags are like 63 feet across by like 45 feet down. You have to be able to see the patriotism, right? The fuck? What's in a fucking symbol? Nationality, my goddamn cunt. Freedom of speech. Not freedom from consequences. What are the consequences of this symbol of violence being interpreted by people who the violence occurred to? What are you entitled to as a victim of your own history? And what are you entitled to as a perpetrator, a genetic perpetrator of the violence against Black people and Indigenous people? I'm from Germany, so don't worry. We didn't do it. We didn't do that genocide.
Flag was like what the flag, like what it's like, how the war started. It's kind of evolved into like a racial thing when really it was not started as racial.
I know he's a opinionated young man. What are your opinions on the Confederate flag?
Absolutely. That's First Amendment right. I think that people are completely misinformed about how the flag was, like what the flag, like what it's like, how the war started. It's kind of evolved into like a racial thing when really it was not started as a racial thing at all. And I think that like it should absolutely be flown, like,
Okay.
like publicly.
Any other opinions as far as agreeing with him or?
Okay, so his point is that because it didn't start out as a racial symbol, that his point is that because it didn't start out as a racial or racialized symbol of hate, that we should still be able to fly the flag under the previous interpretation, under the initial interpretation, but most people are not, like, and white people who fly the Confederate flag are not flying it because they are, like, appreciative of the fact that the Civil War didn't start under for racism, which is what he's saying, and I don't, this is his point, okay? So whether he's right or he's wrong, if he's wrong, that is a part of his opinion, his perspective, which can change. If historically it has been shown that the Civil War did in fact start because of racism, then it's fair for him to change his mind. If history is like, actually, this is why we started to fight, and then it shows that there is that transition into because of the actions that happened under the decision to get into a civil war where Black people got fucked. The idols, the objects that are associated with that time period will also be associated with that transition into meaning, right? We can't really pick and choose the meanings of such massive objects and symbols for violence and rape against Black people. So I don't know if his point was freedom of speech, okay? Freedom of speech, and it didn't start out that way. Okay.
Disagreeing with him. Okay, Mr. Justice.
You do have a right to fly it. I do not think it should be flown on public property, like in front of...
I agree. The end. We should end the video now.
...of a state house. You can also fly it at protests. But he mentioned misconceptions. There are no misconceptions about that flag. The flag that we see today is not actually the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is similar to that of the United States. It has a blue upper right-hand corner with 7 stars in a circle, 2 red stripes, and in the middle a white stripe. The flag we see today is an interpretation of a Confederate battle flag. And the interpretation went up in the 1960s, around the time the Civil Rights Movement started. And to the point where it's not racially motivated. Then how come it's a symbol for so many groups like the KKK and the National Socialist Movement, who, as you all probably know, have white supremacist and neo-Nazi ideologies? Also, I find it ironic that people claim to be patriots when they fly that flag. The Confederates stabbed the Union in the back. They shot first, they murdered 500,000 American soldiers. And they argued that it was because of states' rights. I ask, states' rights to do what? What were we considering getting rid of at the time? Not guns, we weren't trying to raise taxes, it was slavery. We were trying to stop the expansion of slavery to the West. The Southern aristocracy panicked and left the Union. They said, we are not Americans, we are from the South, so we're starting our own country. And then they proceeded to launch numerous terrorist attacks against the Union, shooting at Fort Sumter, murdering 200 people in Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay, now Chris, great points.
Okay. Cool. So America does like terrorism. Domestic terrorism. There we go. I was like, what's the word for that? What do you do when you turn your back on your country and your people? Terrorism.
I want to give them a chance to return. Are there any people that want to put it out, right? Common knowledge. So, any
always
opinions
white
either
boys.
with or against, right?
I do.
So, demographics on the debating white boy. Okay, have your conversations, but let's look. I think it's really interesting that this is an important philosophical discussion that you should be having with your friends and your family. Honestly, this is like really fascinating. What's your mood on what's your mood on the Confederate flag? Oh, you should see my tattoo. Like, have those conversations with people. Whatever it is whatever it is. You don't need to like or dislike a person based on their opinion of a flag. But when we think about the history of philosophy as well, looking at this classroom, who signed up, who gets access to these kinds of conversations, and who needs access to these kinds of conversations. So something that we can reflect on is the increase or the influx of young white guys being drawn into a white supremacist mentality through the loneliness epidemic pipeline, right? Like, when you are feeling low and insecure and not connected to the world around you, not connected to a community, if you feel like you have no identity, if you feel like you have no culture, if you feel like you do not have a healthy relationship with the people that you surround yourself with, a lot of the time, white boys get bored, right? Like, why do you think there's so many school shootings? They get bored and they have no hobbies, they're lonely. Not an excuse. Stop shooting fucking kids, please. It's so stupid. But like, is this representative of the conversations that we should be having with the demographics that we should be having them with as well? Who gets access to these conversations? When do we get to hear women speaking up about this? When do we get to hear, I saw probably like a little Asian boy, maybe a girl, I'm sorry, wearing glasses with like the bangs. On the first swipe over, we're not going to go back. Maybe we'll see them. But like, do y'all got opinions, or is it just white boys, Like, but again, the history of philosophy and the history of what circles are open to who, and in America. But it's cool. I don't know. Who brings up the topic as well?
Do not agree with that at all.
And your reason why he has a right to disagree, but
It was completely a war on northern aggression. North was making unconstitutional and unfair taxes.
Okay. So what did they say? I think, and can I say, I believe that the reason why these high schoolers are kind of like giggling at it is because first off, people love conversations like this. This is a fascinating topic to have a talk about. And when there is it's the anticipation of the argument, it's the anticipation of the discussion. What are we going to learn? Who knows what? And sometimes it can be based in like shame. Oh, are you smarter than me? Am I smarter than you? Our observer reactions to this can be very like giddy almost, in a way. That's kind of what those laughs sounded like to me, is they sound like giddy. Oh, what's he gonna say next? What do you have to say to this? And that's part of the interest of having those discussions. And I can kind of understand that in a debate you can experience value like that to an extent, but I couldn't listen to all this processing I'm going through just to have like a basic understanding of the perspectives at this point in time, right? Like, I don't know what Drake is gonna say. I understand Chris's perspective, and he says that he doesn't agree with the history that Chris has presented. So I guess if he doesn't agree with the history, it would be a matter of why don't you agree with what is a fact about the timeline of America, a fact about the timeline of Canada? Like, why are you so uncomfortable acknowledging the fact of the bullshit that we had to go through, that we had to do to each other, that was done to each other to get us to where we are right now? I understand like the burden of 3 generations, and then imagine the millions of people who were fucking killed because of genocidal reasons, like superiority reasons, inferiority reasons. Imagine being burdened by that history and then knowing that you have to like play these fucking gymnastics and cherry pick all of these facts or these realities which you need to confront. I'm not fucking blaming you. I'm not blaming you. And also, what happened is a fact. Arguing with the fact of history does not help you get over the guilt of the reality of the system that you are also forced to live in because of the actions of genocidal maniacs before you were even conceptualized. Like why the genocide is not your fault, and also it happened. Okay, what's he say?
Your reason why
I love this
I don't agree
thing.
with that at all.
Launched numerous terrorist attacks against the Union, shooting at Fort Sumter, murdering 200 people in Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay, now Chris, great points. I want to give him a chance to return. Are there any? He wouldn't want to pull it out, right? Common knowledge. So, any opinions either with or against, right?
I do not agree with that at all.
And your reason why? He has a right to disagree, but
It was completely a war on northern aggression. North was making unconstitutional and unfair taxes on the South to promote northern manufacturers, because the South's main export was cotton.
Wait, what was this kid's reaction? He's like, nah. We talking this guy right here.
your reason why? He has a right to disagree, but
It was completely a war on northern aggression. North was making unconstitutional and unfair taxes on the South to promote northern manufacturers, because the South's main export was cotton. The Britain manufacturers were like doing better than the North, and so they were selling their goods cheaper here in the U.S. So the North had 5 times more population than the South, so all political votes would go in favor of the North, obviously. And so they voted to put a tariff, like the tariff of 1825 by John Quincy Adams. And that tariff put taxes and promoted the northern industries while also degrading.
This is so intimidating. I'm not a history debater. I could never present my historical facts in this way. Like, you get me in the conversation about like the the fruity history of discrimination and conflict, I could, no problem. But to be able to recall these facts, this is so, so, so intimidating. And not only that, so being able to form a retort or a response based on, like, the facts as you understand them. And right on the spot, I could never. You literally have to, like, you must have to spend, like, 6 hours on each individual topic to just be like, well, what exactly is it that I understand about this, and what is my opinion on it, and why do I feel that way? You would have to spend so much time. I know 6 hours really isn't that long, but my brain just can't think like this. This is incredible to be able to be whipping out facts and then to interpret those facts as well, because it's not just the facts, but it's an interpretation of the facts, which influences your opinion. Like, it influences the way that you think about the world around you.
Southern economies, which is unfair, and they didn't want unconstitutional and unfair treatment, so that's why this outside release.
So what do we say to people who say that they find the flag to be insulting? In what way does that stand? Like, in here, who finds does anybody in this room find the flag insulting other than Mr. Justice? Okay, why do you find the flag insulting, Ms. Keith?
Well, I think it represents a time when racism was huge and slavery was huge, and even if the war wasn't started because of, slavery, it still represents a time where colored people were discriminated against, and so it's kind of frustrating to just see that.
Isn't it good to know about the past and respect what's happened, though? Whether you agree with it or not, you should know it and be knowledgeable on where our country came from, because...
Okay, let's go back to her. Hi, Tyler.
Find the flag insulting, Ms. Keith.
Well, I think it represents a time when racism was huge and slavery was huge, and even if the war wasn't started because of, slavery, it still represents a time where colored people were discriminated against, and so it's kind of frustrating to just see that.
Isn't it good to...
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I think her and I are on the same page. Spelled. I think her and I are on the same page. We're like saying the same thing just because you think that it doesn't relate to... just because the war wasn't started in racism doesn't mean that the symbol isn't associated to racism and a constant reminder to people of color or people who have friends, people whose best friend is their black friend, or, people who feel any sliver of empathy towards the possibility of loss or losing someone in such a horrific way. Just because you believe that the war wasn't started because of racism doesn't mean that association and perpetual reminder isn't absolutely fucking devastating and painful to the people who the actions of that war were affected. Yeah. Okay, and he's like, don't you think it's a good thing if we know our history? Is that right?
Discriminated against, and so it's kind of frustrating to just see that.
Isn't it good to know about the past and respect what's happened, though? Whether you agree with it or not, you should know it.
Isn't it good to know about the past and respect it, though? There's a difference between knowing your history, learning from it, there's a difference, and then celebrating the history, right? Because if you are showing the flag and you're saying, see this is what this has become associated with, versus yeehaw, this is what you associate it with. And it's like the weaponization of memories, generational memories of violence against you for literally your fucking skin color, for nothing more than the fact that you exist as a person browner than the next. Like, there is a huge difference between displaying it for education purposes and displaying it in celebration of the violent meaning behind the symbol. is it the idol? Idol. I guess basically, I mean, you do kind of have like a weird sacred worship to things that are like pretty Nazi coded. A lot of people have like a weird connection to Nazi coded stuff. Basically anything white.
Be knowledgeable on where our country came from, because if all that didn't happen, the South and the North, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be sitting in this classroom. The whole realm of everything would be different. So I think it's a really important part of history that we shouldn't just throw away and get rid of.
Well, can I ask
Yeah, I agree, and again, I stick to my point. There is a difference between flying your Nazi flag and it's the weight of the history that's behind it. Education is key. However, what kind of education are you getting? What biases are you receiving? Because again, like the fact that you can even be sitting in that classroom having a conversation about the fact of the implication of the Confederate flag, the implication, that is a fucking miracle. Y'all ever see The Proud Family? When she goes back in time, tries to be friends with Zoe, and then they're like, stop touching, you're too dark. And Penny was the light-skinned brown girl too, right? Like, I gotta stop saying right like. It's just so hard. Okay, what is the next question that's going to be asked?
Can I ask a question to go along with that, and then you guys can go forward with what you're saying?
Also, compliments to Mr. Muhammad, because this is a spectacular way of keeping a conversation going, keeping it healthy, going back and forth, and then eliciting more conversation through curiosity, through digging into points that are being made. I think this is an effective way to take information in and to learn information, especially because when you are able to, you know, stop and think about the points that the other person has said, you're able to add that to your information in your brain. And again, all of the information in your brain reconciles itself so that you have a better perception and a better understanding of the world around you, so that you can navigate the world around you according to whatever it is that your perception is. So if you perceive the world to be violent, or you are a person who perceives that people deserve to have violence done to them, you are going to act accordingly, unfortunately. And the same goes for if you are less fucking psychotic or weird. Your perception and your mindset and what it is that you take in from the world allows you to understand it much better. And then, I don't know, become a better person usually. Usually when you take information in. We're only 6 minutes and 20 seconds in.
When you bring up the question of history and how it's important to recognize history, then in that right, would you say that it's okay for maybe a person from Germany to fly the Nazi flag and represent that history and say, well, we don't want to forget what happened? Could you see why that could possibly be
I can see,
contradicted?
we study it in school. You don't see many people flying the Nazi flag. I was just talking about the history part of it,
Absolutely.
that we should be knowledgeable. I didn't say we should or should not fly it.
But you think we should definitely... No, I don't think what the discussion is. We definitely have...
This kid's like, please don't call me a Nazi online, please. Like, I swear I don't hate black people. I'm down with the Jews.
have to remember that it's there, right? Like, many people are saying, well, we got to put it in museums at least. But to fly it publicly, do you think that that should be allowed? Neville's your...
Yeah, I mean, I think it should absolutely be allowed. I mean, when you get offended by something, just because a small percentage of Americans get offended by something, doesn't...
Ooh, this is interesting. So before we continue on, we should question, what is the small percentage? What is the small percentage? Are you saying that there are less people offended by racism than there are people who are okay with it? What is your small percentage? And does that mean, does the offense of the individual who has direct or secondary or tertiary association to the violence done under the Confederate flag, does their direct connection to it mean less just because you perceive them to be a smaller minority. I don't, and also, I mean, why are you fighting so hard to defend it? Okay, that's okay. Yes, I'm a little bit offended by this young boy.
Doesn't mean you can take away their First Amendment rights. I mean, we wouldn't have any free speech if a certain amount of people got offended by something, because everything can be.
Okay, but also, what kind of conversation would this boy be having if the same, like, when trans rights come up, or when, like, queer shit happens? Is he more defensive of his property rights than he is of other people's human rights? I guess is my biggest question. And I think that can kind of gauge, like, whether or not an individual is useful in the long run of humanity.
When you get offended by something, just because a small percentage of Americans get offended by something, doesn't mean you can take away their First Amendment rights. I mean,
Just because other people are offended doesn't mean you can shut me up. Okay. Just because you're offended doesn't mean I can't say what I said. It's not a slur, okay? You can say it.
we wouldn't have any free speech if a certain amount of people got offended by something, because everything can be offensive.
Okay.
We wouldn't have free speech if a certain amount of people were offended by something. I hate to say this, but then say the N-word. Like, like, it's one of my favorite. I love that newscaster. The guys are like, all right, say it then. You and me, bro, let's go. Drop the bomb. Like, that's very good to me. All right. Now, okay, so I shouldn't conflate my belief, my interpretation is that I shouldn't be saying it about him, because maybe he's not racist. Maybe he just supports free speech and doesn't understand, like, effect of free speech also undermines, like, a human's rights. Just in general, like you're, and then also you think about, like, the long-term impact. You think about the long-term impact. All I can hear is my chair right now. You think about the long-term impact of ingraining or perpetually messaging that kind of rhetoric to your kids, etc., etc., etc. Maybe at a point maybe at the moment, flying your Confederate Nazi flag is a form of free speech, and you say, I'm gonna just defend it because that's mine. I get to say what I want to say. And you continue to use your free speech to violate the safety of the human beings around you because you're passing on hate speech is violent speech. Like, you are inflaming a disgust in a person when you use hate speech or when you fearmonger. You spark that flame. You tend to the flame until it turns into this. You combust, implode with violent hate against this thing that you have deemed a thing rather than an individual whom you do not know. Okay, I am getting off track. 7 minutes and 18 seconds in.
Raymond?
I feel that
Because everything can be offensive.
Okay.
Everything can be offensive. Yeah, but not everything is offensive. Just because everything could be deemed as offensive doesn't mean that it is offensive. It's the same reason why you don't go off spouting in the newspaper slander. Is it slander or is it libel? It's libel when it's written, slander when it's spoken. Yeah, it's the same. There are consequences to your actions, to your decisions, to your opinions, because the way that you act is a reflection on the things that you believe, right? Like, we are morally driven individuals, whether we know it or not. To come back. it's still warm. I knew where I was going, but then I forgot. That's okay. Maybe take away whatever point you want from that. Glean whatever you please. Who am I to tell you to understand what I'm saying or not? Who am I to give you things to understand? Did I cover all the things I wanted to cover about this kid? It's freedom. Say what you want. Who cares if it's racist? Who cares if a couple people feel bad? Okay, then why don't we just... Who cares if you feel bad? Like... Stupid. So, and also, can we quickly look at this? The, like, hand covering habits. That's also something I'm a little bit interested in, is what is going on with this? What are you thinking? What are they thinking about?
Doesn't mean you can take away their First Amendment rights. I mean, we wouldn't have any free speech if
Yes, you would have free speech. It's free within reason. It's free within reason, free without impact. I mean, not without impact, but without, like, impact which infringes on another individual's sanctity and safety and dignity, right to life, right to liberty. Y'all got that, right? Like, isn't that in your Constitution? You guys are, like, free, but not that free. That's everybody. That's okay. That's what laws are. This boy would be the first to go. No, I would be the first to go, but for sure this guy would get... Sorry.
a certain amount of people got offended by something, because everything can be offensive.
Okay.
So,
No,
Raymond?
not everything can be offensive. Not everything can be offensive. That's also what keeps society, like, civil, correct? A certain amount of decorum in the world, a certain amount of social propriety, you know? You keep your hate to yourself and your neighbors. Not everybody needs to know how prideful you are about the things that you don't like.
I feel that you definitely have the right to be offended by the Confederate flag. Even now when you have like Klan meetings, they fly the Confederate flag.
Even now when you have Klan meetings. You know, next Thursday they have it down at the church, right? Every Thursday. Thursday at 6:30. Who do you think caters the Klan meetings? Oh my gosh. Even when they have Klan meetings now, isn't that such a throwaway? Yeah. Oh my god, and look at the people who are sitting on the ground
The Confederate
versus...
flag even now.
Look at the girls who are sitting on the ground. This is so fascinating to me. What is the setup?
Now when you have like Klan meetings, they fly the Confederate flag. And so someone, like a group of people who hate minorities, not just blacks, but Hispanics, Jews, people from the Middle East, they have this ideology that you, as a minority, are lesser, then you definitely have the right to be offended, even if it was just history.
well, I mean, you can be offended, but you can't deny someone the First Amendment.
I mean,
Yes, you can.
I feel like that's also like hate speech also, and so hate speech is not allowed in the Constitution.
What is hate
It's-
speech, do you say?
So like at Klan meetings, I feel like everything within a Klan meeting is hate speech. And so I feel like the only reason that they are allowed to have these meetings is because it's the First Amendment right. But when you start to fully belittle...
Yes, okay, because they're in private. Like, yeah, y'all could say whatever you want, but when it starts to, again, impede on the rest of society's safety, y'all are the minority. You white supremacists are the minority, which is why you're spreading that rhetoric, which is why you're, like, desperate to cling to these young boys. Weird. That's why you are clinging to these young, impressionable minds, because you know they're not very strong. They're not very strong. These men just need to be cared for in a way that isn't done that is done by clan cult type things. Anyway, y'all are the minority. It's okay for you to talk about it in your private little fucking fruity ass boys club, but like, it's not okay when it starts to affect other people in a way that is unsafe or that negatively impacts their right to life. Like,
minorities, then you shouldn't be allowed to fly the flag and have those meetings.
See, what I'm stressing is that you guys are misinformed about the flag's like origins. You're saying
okay, so focus on origins rather than, okay, so he's focused on that the history is wrong, so we shouldn't be associating it with racism. We should be associating it with what it initially started out as. But everybody else is like, racism is bad and maybe we shouldn't allow it in public.
saying that it's racist, but the flag is not a racist thing. It's been molded by our society to be looked at as a racist thing.
Yes, which means that we agree as society that it is racist. If people agree in society that a thing is a thing, then that's what that thing is. If a group it's like the white hoods of the Klansmen, right? We associate the Klan hoodie to white supremacy and violence. You can't fucking, free speech if you want to walk around in a motherfucking Klansman outfit. Consequences. Just because you go out in a white suit doesn't mean you're a Klans member. However, we associate the white suit with Klansmanship. I don't know. Is that the politically correct word for Klans people? Sorry. Klans persons? I'm a feminist through and through, I swear. Egalitarian, that's what they call me. Yeah, so I wonder if this is going to be a point that he'll be able to understand is like, okay, sure. Even if you think that the history of the flag started out like this as a protective, even if you think that the flag came from a sense of national pride, protection of the South kind of thing, that doesn't change the fact of society's agreeance that what the flag means is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Society has just decided, yes. Society has decided that we need to use toilet paper when we wipe our ass, right? Like, Western society has decided that a bidet is more disgusting than fucking toilet paper, okay? Things can be wrong. Things can change. And things can change for the better. And it's not scary. Like, yeah, it sucks that the Confederate flag is now associated with racism and raping black women and, all the fucking weird stuff that happened in the Americas. And you just can't deny it. Can't forget.
When really it's not.
Okay,
Okay, the flag is not a racist thing. It's been molded by our society.
Like how the Nazis bogarted the Indian swastika. So now you can't see a swastika, an Indian swastika, without thinking, oh yeah, remember the Jews? Like, remember that whole fucking genocide thing?
And the flag is not a racist thing. It's been molded by our society to be looked at as a racist thing, when really it's not.
Also like how maps are stealing queer flags to try and make the gay community look fucking weird, look like disgusting like they are. Ew. Also a form of cultural appropriation, cultural inappropriation. No, no. I don't know. You be funny. You make the joke this time.
Okay,
And-
so
Okay.
okay, sorry. I get
Don't
like
apologize.
that the history you might see it as not being racist, but right now, like currently, it is seen as racist. The Klan could have it, so I feel like we couldn't look at it as it not being racist.
Brittany?
Going off what Rainey said, so you said that the Confederate flag, like the origins of it wasn't racist. Like that's not why they created it.
Yes.
But the origins of the swastika as well were not racist. It was a Hindu
What did I
symbol
just
for
say?
well-being.
Oh my god. These are like the two examples, right? Like, remember the Nazis? Let's not act like that. Let's not do things that are replicative of the fucking Nazi regime, you know?
Hell. So that has transformed into be a discriminatory, bigotry symbol. The same thing is happening with the Confederate flag. So you don't see people like putting the swastika up saying, oh, this is for well-being and health. It has transformed and evolved as over time. So the same thing is happening with the Confederate flag. So now it doesn't mean the same thing as it meant when it was originally.
And to that point, you know, that's the same thing we can say with the American flag. I think Michael brought up a good point about we have to recognize the history. We can't disregard the history. The history of the American flag is controversial too. There was one time where that same flag represented women not being able to vote. That same flag represented segregation. But now the flag itself represents a lot of other things. So we have to also recognize that what is the symbolism of it now?
Okay. American flag represents a lot of things. Nationalism. Okay, so I once upon a time used to associate positive things to the Canadian flag, and now every time I see a fucking Canadian flag being flown on the side doors of a truck in Canada, I'm like, you're fucking racist. And I hate that. I hate that because I love where I live. I love this land. I love this country. You know that song that they used to make us sing at every Earth Day? You know, reduce, reuse, recycle. Thanks for all that. Thanks for that propaganda that never fucking panned out. We really should have had this dealt with. I'm old. I'm old now. This land is your land. This land is my land. From Bonavista Vista to Vancouver Island. This land was made for you and me. We would always sing that every time. Bop, bop, bop. Why you say those words?
Controversial too. There was one time where that same flag represented women not being able to vote.
Oh yeah, and that sucks. Oh my god, I love Canada. Everything in this fucking country is so cool, and I hate that shitty people took the Canadian flag and made it awful. I hate you. I hate you people so fucking much. I hate that you have destroyed my fucking my home. I hate that you've destroyed my home. It makes me so sick. It makes me so fucking angry. Like, how dare you come into my country, use my flag for your fucking racist rhetoric? Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? That's not Canada. Get the fuck out of my space. Oh, God. God. Fucking hate racist. Y'all could fucking end it. Please. Thank you.
That same flag represented segregation. That same flag represented... The history of the American flag is controversial too. There was one time where that same flag represented women not being able to vote. That same flag represented segregation. But now the flag itself represents a lot of other things. So we have to also recognize that what is the symbolism of it now, and is it relevant now? That's the question. Is it something that we need to be able to fly now? You want to speak to that?
I mean, I think, let me think.
Yeah, okay. So is he's saying like the relevance? What is the point of flying? What is the point of displaying our beliefs out in public? What is the point? Why do we display our pride flags on our windows? Why do we display our Jets propaganda in our bedrooms? Why do we connect with the names and the brands and the associations that we connect with? Because they express a part of our identity that we would like others to connect with. And when it comes to you flying, is it relevant? Is that really something that you want to be like here's a home where you can come be racist. Don't you have other things to bond about? Aren't there more interesting things in the world? I really do fucking hope so. I do think there is more interesting things than being racist and boring. What is the relevance of flying a flag which has a racist association? I mean, go ahead, but you're fucking stupid. You're fucking weird. You're not welcome. Go ahead and, like, talk about all your weird little racist beliefs, but you are not welcome in the country. You are a piece of shit, and you really don't deserve to be living anywhere that gives you access to anything that you have had the opportunity to enjoy. You do not deserve to live in a society where you have opportunity if you are just going to destroy the lives of other people. For what? What's the point of you? What is the point of you? You are a valueless waste of space, and I genuinely hope that you recognize that and choose to take your racist self and go to the ocean. Go find an island in the ocean. I say we round up all the racists and we put them on their own little island and let them fucking do their own thing. Here, some of you guys are doctors. Some of you, oh my God, you guys could have just like a fine society being all like hateful and racist to yourselves. You could just do that. Ew, are white people a parasite? A virus? Yuck, hate is a virus. And I guess hate is really cancerous as well if you really want to get into it. Just like one person spewing their hateful rhetoric, displaying the cancer symbol, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, you know what? Like a bull. I think I really like the way that Nazi symbol flaps in the wind. I really connect to that. Who lives there? I'm gonna go say hi. I brought you spaghetti. Look, I made it look like the Nazi flag. What do you think?
Earlier, Christopher said that,
Okay.
Is that, what is the symbolism of it now, and is it relevant now? That's the question. Is it something that we need to be able to fly now? You want to speak to that?
I mean, let me think. Earlier, Christopher said that, wait, I had it in my head. I had it in my head before you said
That's
that.
okay.
Yes, sir.
There were like, okay, so there were some like Orthodox, like Muslim groups that would have 5 pillars and they'd signify that whenever they did terrorist acts. I mean, there are so many good Muslim people out there that we can't just stereotype the 5 pillars with the terrorist acts, which is that's like saying just because KKK people use the Confederate flag doesn't mean we can stereotype all Confederate people flying
Okay.
flag with KKK members.
Okay. Interesting point. Okay, hold on. I need to stand up. Okay, so his point was that just because the Klan uses the Confederate flag doesn't mean that the Confederate flag represents the Klan. Okay, fine, fair. However, if your icon is something that the Klan really likes, if the history and representation that the Klan believes is associated with the Confederate flag is white supremacy, why would you want to associate Confederates who fought in the war, or people who are on the Confederate side, believe in what the Confederates believed in or whatever, bulk beyond just the racism? Why wouldn't you choose a more interesting or a different symbol completely? Just completely remove yourself from the Confederate flag of it all. You know, pick a different symbol to iconize the Confederate, the good side of the Confederacy, you know, like the good side of the Confederacy, whatever that means to you. Like, too bad. I know you don't like to be thrown into the racist bucket, but you calls them as you sees them. If your association is to something, if you connect so heavily to this extent with something that means racism to other people, as a form of protective measures, as a form of like self-defense, of course, people are going to avoid you as a whole, because a symbol, an object which you like and are defensive over makes people think about racism. It's just protective, you know? Like, if you're gonna associate and protect a racist icon, then you are also going to be associated with that racist icon, therefore deemed racist, right? And that's not your fault, but that is your choice. Freedom of association is still a thing beyond your speech. Like, free politics, baby. I gotta take a break. Okay. Tea. Just because people think it's racist doesn't mean they should be, right? What was his argument?
Wait, I had it in my head. I had it in my head.
Yes, sir.
There were like, okay, so there were some like Orthodox like Muslim groups that would have 5 pillars and they'd signify that whenever they did terrorist acts. I mean, there are so many good Muslim people out there that we can't just stereotype the 5 pillars with the terrorist acts, which is that's like saying just because KKK people use the Confederate flag doesn't mean we can stereotype all Confederate people flying the flag with KKK members.
Yeah, I was gonna say the.
What was his point? 5 pillars of terrorism. No, 5 pillars, and then using the 5 pillars to justify terrorist actions. Is that what he's saying? Oh, I feel like I've been alive for too long. Plenty of good Muslim people. That's so nice of him to say. There's plenty of good Muslim people, and you can't take... But that's what you do in America. That's literally, like, America's thing is, I fucking hate Muslims. That's just, like, what you guys do. Yeah. No, but that's not the point. It's not fair. Like, racism is bad, right? That's essentially the argument, is like racism is bad and it hurts people and it shouldn't be displayed proudly publicly because that makes the world unsafe for the people who those racist symbols violate. And yeah, but I want to put the flag up. These are the two arguments. Yeah, but it's my right to put the flag up. Okay? That doesn't mean that it should be up. Okay, what was the Muslim thing. The whole Muslim thing. The whole Muslim thing. 5 pillars, re-justified for terrorist violence. Don't call all Muslims terrorists. America does that. They're wrong. However, I think you're conflating misinterpretation. Or I don't know if I'm using that word right. Like, the Confederate flag is closer to racism by a degree of like 3, right? There was the Civil War, whether the flag started out representing racism or not, the eventual turn of the flag being associated with racism because of the slavery thing during the Confederate War, Civil War, I think. And then the Klan really resonating this way. And then the Klan really resonating with that message and using the flag to represent that their racism is in line with the racism of the Civil War. And then, so that's one. I don't think you can compare it to a religion which in its majority is based on like a form of love, and then that message being flipped to be of terrorism in the name of love, terrorism in the name of religious love. Can you even compare religious beliefs to the symbology of the Confederate flag? Like, are those comparable to each other? I think there's like a difference. I really think there's a difference between the two, that this comparison doesn't make sense to me. I want to sit over here now. Here now.
Christopher was saying that KKK groups and other hate groups were flying the Confederate flag, but they were also flying.
What? All Confederate people flying the flag with KKK members. What?
Yeah, I was gonna say that Christopher was saying that KKK groups and other hate groups were flying the Confederate flag, but they were also flying the American flag. So I don't think that that's a valid argument at all.
So, okay. But America started off representing like America as a whole, the nation, where the Confederate flag was like a sub nation of the general America. And even today, yeah, like you were saying, doesn't the American flag hold like a weight to it, another racist weight to it? Hold on, what's your point?
Saying that KKK groups and other hate groups were flying the Confederate flag, but they were also flying the American flag. So I don't think that that's a valid argument at all in terms of like evolving the Confederate flag into racism, because if that was the case, then the American flag would also be known as racist.
Yeah, the American flag is known as racist. It is. Lots of people associate America with violence and racism. The nation and the people are good. However, the association is not good. The association is like bad. The history is bad. There is an essence of pride attached. Like I said, I felt good looking at the Canadian flag up until it was taken by people who are so fucking hateful. And I don't have that relationship to the American flag because, you know, I'm not American. And I don't have the same relation to the Confederate flag because, again, I don't identify with the concept of the Confederacy. I understand racism bad and I don't like it. But I don't care about all that. I got opinions, obviously, but I don't care. What was he saying in this last part?
other hate groups were flying the Confederate flag, but while they were
Okay,
also
yeah.
flying the American flag. So I don't think that
Yeah, so some people, yeah, so you might not even associate, and at this point in time, again, like your interpretation of symbols can change. It evolves as you become more exposed to not just the essence of the symbol, but like the root meaning of everything that you surround yourself with, right? Like when you think a little bit deeper about oh my gosh, all of this, what is all this? Why is it that I surround myself with these things? A form of identity. Be proud of your country because you are proud of the people that you love, because it's where you are from, it's where you learn how to succeed, and it's where you become the person that you will be for the rest of your life. It's good to love where you live because of that. However, there are aspects of that flag which give it a heavier weight, which are associated with a lot of pain and a lot of violence. And if you have or haven't ever had like a fucking traumatizing experience in your life and you are put back into that state, accidentally brought back into that emotional state where you are having a flashback of the moment that you're traumatized, you know that just by simple association, what would be considered non-threatening to one person is absolutely disastrous for you. The flag. And then, like, how much do we care about the people in our society to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe if this hurts you, I shouldn't be fucking doing it for any reason. Pride or not. White pride. Or not.
that's a valid argument at all in terms of like evolving the Confederate flag into racism, because if that was the case, then the American flag would also be known as racist.
I think we're gonna let the professor speak once again.
Okay. Before the United Before the United States was what it is today, that did represent slavery and women not having the right to vote. But the thing is, we evolved. The United
That means the Canadian flag was also a symbol of not having the right to vote for women or, you know, Indigenous people. Gosh.
United States has evolved over the years. Our founding fathers made it so we could change. When the Union was trying to change the way slaves were treated, the Confederacy, as I said, stabbed us in the back and murdered 500,000 people.
500,000 people, that's
And
crazy.
to your argument that the Confederate flag didn't...
Oh my god, okay, because Winnipeg only has like 800,000 people. That'd be crazy. What the fuck? Imagine 500,000 Winnipeggers just like... Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that would clear up housing. Would make more room for me. Ooh, what's the likelihood of me surviving another civil war? 500,000 people. Oh my god, that's so scary. Okay. No. No war. Wouldn't it be crazy if they taught high schoolers how to do war? Like trained people how to make weapons in high school?
didn't start out as racist, I disagree. Here is a direct quote from the Confederate Constitution. Other than this one bit, it is exactly the same as that of the United States. Quote, no bill or...
Okay, so I was a little bit confused by this because when people speak well, I can't follow. I can't follow what you're saying. I'm trying so hard to cling to the words and understand what it is that you're saying, and this man was just like, he got this shit. Okay, so I believe if I can clarify for myself, he is comparing the American Constitution to the Confederate Constitution, and the difference, what is copy and paste, what did you change? And I think he says that there is one specific line which emphasizes keeping black people slaves. Like, they were like, we are the America, except we're the America that keeps slaves, huh? Kind of impressive tactics. I mean, not like impressive. I just very kind of petty in what feels like a very American way, a very petty American way of making a country, or separating a country at least.
Attainder ex post facto law or law denying or impairing the right of property in Negro slaves shall be passed. So it says, no matter what, we will keep our slaves. If facto law, quote, no bill or attainder ex post facto law or law denying or impairing the right of property in Negro slaves shall be passed. So it says, no matter what,
Okay.
we will keep our slaves. If the Confederates really were fighting for states' rights and were trying to preserve the United States, then why is this the one thing that they changed? If this wasn't key to the Civil War, why is this the one thing that they actually changed?
I have a question for you.
Let's let him.
Why? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I personally don't have a problem with that question. Because whether we were there for the conversations or not, what can be implied by the evidence or by the information that we have in front of us is that there was one highly specific strife between slave owners and people who were not slave owners, or people who are like, maybe slavery is bad. It's kind of like cool, hear me out, it's kind of cool that there was enough people who hated slavery to be like, we're actually not cool with you liking slavery, so we're gonna like fight you about it now. I think maybe we should fight racists more. Maybe we should start like punching racists in the face, just decking them, just get them the fuck out of here. Pop, pop, pop. I want to do a hate crime on a racist. Pardon me. Wait, what did he say?
A question for you.
Let's let him. Let's calm down.
Mr. Yost, if you said that it was that the South stabbed the North in the back by seceding, right?
Yes.
If you're
Okay.
reading the Articles of Confederation, you'll read that it was 100% legal for any state or group of states to secede. If you'd read the rest
That
of the Articles of
article is
Confederation.
no longer relevant. We got rid of it after
why did you
Shays
bring it
rebellion.
up?
Why did you just bring it up
bring
then?
it up and-
I didn't bring up the Articles of Confederation.
You
The
just
Articles
read
of
Okay, yeah, see, this is where I would get absolutely hammered because, what the fuck? What's the difference between...
Confederation
You
were
bring up the Constitution of the Confederacy.
the Constitution of the Confederate States of America. The Articles of Confederation was the first constitution.
Also, the high that you get when you're like, yeah, well, actually, is like fucking insane. It's such a cool feeling to serve and get served.
Of the United States.
Okay.
We got rid of it after an uprising in Massachusetts and have what we have today. The
Listen,
Articles of
you-
Confederation are no longer relevant.
All right, I have another question for you. If you're gonna say it the
Okay, articles. Okay, so he's not gonna address that, I guess.
war was started on slavery, what percentage of white Southerners own slaves?
Okay. Question. What does it matter? What does it matter, the percentage of people who were slave owners? Like, slavery is bad. Slavery is not good. I think we could agree that any amount of people who are enslaved to another group of people here in Western society, I think we think it's not great. you know, despite the fact that we're like wage slaves, of course, because we have to make ends meet, we have to barely survive, and we have to accept whatever crumblies we're given. I think any percentage of slavery is not good, no matter how, if this point is what I think this point might be. I don't think this is an appropriate point to make. Yeah, there wasn't that many slave owners. What, only 5%? How many slaves did that 5% have? How many human beings? Human beings. How many human beings' bodies were taken away from them? How many human beings' autonomy was taken away from them? Just because it was only 5%, which I think is what he's going to say, does not mean that any percentage is okay. It's not that many. We only have like 5% of the population is poor or starving. You know, it's only 5%. It's not that bad. Like, yes, it is. Any percentage of starving people is bad. It's a human rights infringement. Like, why are you defending it? It's fucking weird.
And here's my other point.
That's 5%.
Diverting from the question.
5%.
Let me answer that. Now, the South was controlled by an elite of rich white people.
Okay, you see,
The elite.
this is so dramatic and I love it. Like, this guy is like, oh, I'm on a roll. And I think it's very funny. I like seeing the confidence. But part of me also is like, oh, okay, is this how you're going to present your whole argument all of a sudden? And especially like the power dynamic between the standing and the sitting man. I think that it's important to have those conversations in a more balanced way rather than a debate bro domineering sort of like, oh yeah, oh yeah, like yeah, learn him, get this bitch learned, but also, oof, this dynamic could get a little bit, could create hostility.
Was trying to make themselves more powerful by pushing the Union into allowing them to move their slaves northward. Here's what they did. They tricked poor Southern whites into thinking they were fighting for freedom, when in reality they were being used as cannon fodder in a war that only benefited the rich people in the South.
Now, before we go into a historical rundown,
Cool. See, look, you fucking poor idiots. See, okay, and then poor whiteys and their lack of education, poor whiteys and their lack of access to proper education, poor people and the weaponization of their need to survive, of the human nature to live. Like, to be coerced and taken advantage of. He didn't answer the question, but 5% is still like, I don't know the point of why. I don't know why that point got brought up, but any percentage of slavery is bad. And lonely white people who are oppressed by their poverty status are likely to be taken advantage of and shown the enemy and told, if you fix this problem, if you solve this problem, this whole race thing that we have going on, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And how are people impoverished back in ye olde times? Again, like, slave labor is slave labor, and also wage slavery, keeping you so poor that you're not able to, and also back in yield poverty, keeping you so poor that you're not able to make your ends beyond your ends. You're not able to thrive, you're not able to extend yourself further, and especially in yield poor times where there was probably only like 3 kinds of labor. Honestly, there was probably a lot more kinds of labor because everybody had to have like a version of specialization in the things that we are so blessed to have now. What is all this stuff? Oh, we don't have time to get into it. I don't know.
All right, let's bring it back to East, okay? So, looking at the debate, looking at the discussion, is it relevant for the East population to fly it? Because none of us here, I don't think, are from the South, all right? Or some of you may be, I don't know. But we currently live in, or we're stationed out of Prairie Village, Kansas. So to what extent, or what is the point of some of you deciding to portray it here? What is your rationale?
In my view,
Okay, so it's you guys weren't even involved in the war, so why are you interested in what this flag represents if it doesn't represent racism? Am I getting that?
Some of you may be, I don't know. But we currently live in, or we're stationed out of Prairie Village, Kansas. So to what extent, or what is the point of some of you deciding to portray it here? What is your rationale?
in my views, the Confederate flag it's a flag on, it's a you can't push me anymore, I'm gonna retaliate. It's like the Gadsden flag from the Revolution.
I'm gonna be racist whether you like it or not. Is that... like, what are you fighting for? I guess maybe is my question. The thing that's like sticking in my brain is what does the thing that you fly to represent you representing? Like, what do you stand for under that flag?
What is your rationale?
In my views, the Confederate flag it's a flag on, it's a you can't push me anymore, I'm gonna retaliate. It's like the Gadsden flag from the Revolutionary War. The North, I feel that the North was doing unfair things to the South.
I really like that part. Just so you know, this is an opinion. I like that. And I think that's important. Like, the media, your popular news media who interacts with things in a bit of a reactionary way, I think could do to use more words like I feel this opinion, I believe this opinion, rather than this opinion as fact, and kind of tricking people into thinking that because the language that you use is so affirmative that it is true, it is a truth. It's important to, and I think this kid does like a great job being like, okay, let me just be clear. This is my interpretation of what happened based on his knowledge.
Out of Prairie Village, Kansas. So to what extent, or what is the point of some of you deciding to portray it here? What is your rationale?
In my views, the Confederate flag it's a flag on, it's a you can't push me anymore, I'm gonna retaliate. It's
Or the phrase, you can't tread on me, as well.
like the Gadsden flag from the Revolutionary.
Okay, so... Yeah. So I think my question is the same. Like, what exactly are you defending through the display? What exactly is it that you can't tread on me, you can't push me around anymore, I'm not gonna take your governmental control, you can't tell me not to have slaves, I want 10 of them. Is that what you want people to know about you, to think about you, to see about you? The you can't push me around anymore also is expressed through the pride flag. It is also expressed through any sort of movement in favor of a human's sense of dignity. In favor of a human's sense of dignity. Yeah. A lot of flags. What the fuck are flags, man? What are flags? I haven't even yet. What are flags? Why do we wave them? Flags as a form of communication is actually kind of interesting now in my brain, now that I'm thinking about it.
War. The North, I feel that the North was
That's really funny.
doing unfair things to the South, I feel.
I just love
It's
that.
like a
That's really
Gadsden
funny to
flag from
me.
the Revolutionary War. The North. I feel that the North was doing unfair things to the South, unconstitutional things, and the flag was a symbol of like, you can only push me so far before I retaliate.
And
Okay, so he believes that the North was being mean to the South. For what reason? I don't know, because I don't know the history. I don't know what part he could interpret as North being mean to South or South retaliating in kind to the North. But what are they defending? Again, like what would your alternatives be to the way that the North treated the South if your interpretation was that the North was being mean about the whole slavery thing?
And do you not feel that the current American flag represents that right for you?
Oh, it absolutely does. But the current American flag was also us seceding from Britain, or not seceding, but so I mean,
My question is, how many of us in here stand up under that flag and represent the United States of American flag?
I think all of us.
So is there a need for another flag to be flown to unite us as a people?
Why are there
Is there a need for a Kansas
It's
state
not
flag or a
uniting,
Shawnee
it's,
Mission
the
flag? I
Confederate
mean,
flag wouldn't unite us as a people.
Wait, do the different states have different flags? Because I know the different provinces have different flags. Yes, okay. Correct. They all look exactly the same. I guess you can only do so much with 50 states, right? There's only a finite amount of flag displays you can show. Why don't we get a new flag?
How many of us in here stand up under that flag and represent the United States of American flag?
I think all of us.
So is there a need for another flag to be flown to unite us as a people?
Why are there
Is there a need for a Kansas
It's
state
not
flag or a
uniting,
Shawnee
it's,
Mission
the
flag? I
Confederate
mean,
flag wouldn't unite us as a people. I'm not saying yes or no to fly now, I'm saying neutral.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But you can still identify with it personally, your own personal opinions. When you fly that flag, you're not saying everyone around me, this is who we are. You're just saying, I believe in certain things about this flag, and those things, I want to exemplify those to everybody else.
Yes.
I'll go here and then I'll go there.
Personal opinions. When you fly that flag, you're not saying everyone around me, this is who we are. You're just saying, I believe in certain things about this flag. And
Yeah, so like I had said, the subcategory of American kind of thing. The same way that the states have all their special little flags, you identify through the categories that you're placed under. If you can identify with America and the American flag in one way, and someone can identify with it in another way. And you can fly that flag up in a class and have everybody resonating with it in whatever way it is that they do, you know, Pledge of Allegiance, etc., the whole indoctrination into the nation kind of thing. And have those feel like you're still bonding, even if you're not bonding over the same interpretation of that symbol. But when it comes to the Confederate flag, the Nazi symbol, there's got to be other stuff, right? I guess the communist symbol, unfortunately, has a history of being associated with shitty stuff. I wonder... Oh, fuck, that feels good. Holy cow.
I'm saying neutral.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But you can still identify with it personally.
So, I mean,
My question is, how many of us in here stand up under that flag and represent the United States of America flag.
I think all of us.
So is there a need for another flag to be flown to unite us as a people?
Why are there
Is there a need for a Kansas
It's
state
not
flag or a
uniting,
Shawnee
it's,
Machinese
the
flag? I
Confederate
mean,
flag wouldn't unite us as a people. I'm not saying yes or no to flag.
Okay, and I think also, I will let him finish, I swear. But I really appreciate this classroom full of people who are wanting to participate, or this classroom full of people who interpret the world. And that was not, I mean, I don't know, is that something that I thought before this guy pointed this out? Is oh shit, what was his point? Oh yeah, what is the concept of unification, and what is the effect of that unification? So unification of clans people can likely result in a lot of violence towards the people that the clan hate. Mob mentality, the sparking of hate between one and another, right? Yeah, is there an appropriate amount of association or an appropriate amount of spread and unification? Is there an appropriate way to unify or to show people that you connect to others under the symbology of like racism? Do you want other people to know that about you? Why do you want people to know that about you? Why do you need to fly the flag?
Oh, no, I'm saying
Yeah, no, it's good. Need for another flag to be flown to unite us as a people.
Why are there
Is there a need for a Kansas
it's
state
not
flag or a
uniting,
Shawnee
it's,
Machinese
the
flag? I
Confederate
mean,
flag wouldn't unite us as a people. I'm not saying yes or no to fly, no, I'm saying neutral.
Yeah, no, it's good.
But you can still identify with it personally, your own personal opinions. When you fly that flag, you're not saying everyone around me, this is who we are. You're just saying, I believe in certain things about this flag, and those things, I want to exemplify those to everybody else.
I'll go here and then I'll go there.
I mean, I agree with that. I think you have every right to identify with it, but I think it's extremely bigoted and hateful to do that when you are like aware of what it stands for. And you can claim that it stands for states' rights, but if you like took a history class, I assume you know that states' rights in the context of the Civil War were about slavery. Sure, they were about other things, but they were majority about slavery. You took a history class, you know that. You're choosing to be bigoted, and I don't understand that.
Choosing to be bigoted. Very heavy language. Very, like, divisive language. Which I think is okay. Passionate language. Disappointed language. Choosing to be bigoted. Yeah. I agree to an extent. I think it's the choice to display your bigotry, not the choice to be bigoted. There is, in my opinion, a difference. If you're going to believe what you're going to believe, okay, I cannot stop you. The only person who can change the way that you perceive the world, the way that you perceive other people, the threat level of strangers, just because of the way that they look. You're the only person who can control how you gauge the world around you. I also think that it is hard, for people to know better when they don't get the chance to know better. And maybe they do and maybe they don't. Maybe they're misinformed, or maybe they are informed and also choosing ignorance. But we don't know, and I don't think we should presume the education level and the access of people who you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, I don't want to be presumptive, but at any point in time, sorry, I didn't grab your name, girl. Isabel. You, Isabel, at any point in time, sorry. You, Isabel, at any point in time could be transformed into a white supremacist or a trad wife. You know, all it takes is one trigger point. All it takes is one experience to change the way that you perceive the world. And it's not always by choice. And yes, you can catch yourself when you start to think maladaptively, when you start to think ill of people for no reason other than just like a reaction that you have to an experience that you've gone through or to an association that you've made in your mind, you don't always have control over that. And you again, you do not know what you don't know. But I do agree that a lot of people take pride in the racist aspect of a Confederate flag or a Nazi flag or whatever. I mean, nobody, I literally cannot imagine someone flying a Nazi flag in Canada openly. Like, I can't see it in my brain. I can't. And I'm trying so hard to imagine it. You know what? I don't want that to be the first image that pops into my brain. Confederate flag, Confederate flag. We are talking about the Confederate flag. Wait, how? Confederate flag. Talking about Confederate flag. Talking about Confederate flag. Talking about Confederate flag. Isabel, choosing bigotry to display a thing, knowing you're choosing. Yeah, okay. I don't disagree, but I also don't agree. I think there are exceptions to the rule. And also there's not. I don't know. I don't know.
Are like aware of what it stands for, and you can claim that it stands for states' rights, but if you like took a history class, I assume you know that states' rights in the context of the Civil War were about slavery. Sure, they were about other things, but they were majority about slavery. You took a history class, you know that. You're choosing to...
Okay, but also there's, again, like, your right to a good education does not equal your access to a good education. And so many people who are in these supremacist groups are not, they're very well educated, but many of them are not well educated. And that is the awkward dynamic, the awkward dichotomy between people who need education and need support to go further in life and who are promised that they can go further if they just continue to hate these people, because these people are the reason why you can't get what it is that you deserve, while being like oppressed and suppressed by the richer, more educated class of white supremacists. It's just fucking, it's not fair. It's not fair. Some people get bigoted without their consent, and that is so fucking sad. That's so sad. Come on over, hold on, bye-bye. Hold on, hold on. Hold on. Oh. It smells good, hey. Nice little rain going on right now. $15 minutes and 54 seconds. We've gotten 9 minutes in. It's a 55-minute video.
Be bigoted, and I don't understand that.
Mr. Shutt.
So why do you fight a Confederate flag or whatever?
I'm not saying it.
Okay. So why do you fight a Confederate flag or whatever?
I'm not saying it.
Okay. I'll take that as a yeah. Okay. So why do you?
They were about...
Do you guys remember what it was like to laugh in high school? Like, learning is actually, like, really fun. When it's fun.
Other things, but they were majority about slavery. You took a history class, you know that. You're choosing to be bigoted, and I don't understand that.
The privilege of education. The privilege of access to education. This is a gift. Not everybody gets to have these conversations. Not everybody gets to learn. Not everybody registers information through a history textbook either. Not everybody associates well with school in this kind of setting. Not everybody learns like this. I don't like that sort of mentality. That's okay. She'll learn. She is gonna learn. I'm sure she has. It's been like 8 years.
Mr. Shutt.
So why do you fight a Confederate flag or whatever?
I'm not saying it.
Okay. I'll take that as why do you find the flag because of what you said earlier that you can only push me so far, blah 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 blah. What does it like represent when you put it on your car or put it in front of your house or wherever you put it?
Okay, I like that this is a question that is being asked between people rather than being asked questions and then having a discussion. I like the idea of proposing a question to the individuals, having the conversation to get a clearer understanding and answer for what it is that they believe and why it is that they believe that. So specifically, what do you associate X with so that we have an understanding of what other people associate X with? We can make a comparison and then come to either an understanding, an agreement, or a continued disagreement. But that's a really, I think, important question to ask. What does this mean to you? How can I explain what it means to me and why it means that so that we can come to an understanding?
What the flag because of what you said earlier that you can only push me so far, blah 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 blah. What does it like represent when you put it on your car or put it in front of your house or wherever you put it?
It represents you can only push me so far. I have a
But
Gadsden
like, what does that
flag
mean?
sticker on my car.
What does that mean? You can only push me so far. Who can only push you? How far in relation to what? What is the context of the being pushed? And what's the after effect of the bumper sticker? Push you so far in what? How are you going to react when you are pushed too far? Yeah, I guess like, again, the essence of violence. Like, you watch out. Oh, you better not tell me what to do or I'm a do a kill. I'm gonna murder you.
Which is revolutionary. Represents you can only push me so far. I have a Gadsden
I
flag
don't know what that
sticker on my
means.
car, which is revolutionary one, the yellow one with the snake. I think that they're very represents you can only push me so far. I have a Gadsden flag sticker on my car, which is revolutionary one, the yellow one with the snake. I think that they're
That's the don't tread on me one. I thought that's what he was talking about. That's just like another Nazi flag.
they're very similar. You can only push me so far.
Georgia, you had your hand up.
Yeah,
Cause like, yeah, but there are other like symbols. There are other symbols that show whether or not you're on the good side or the bad side of you can only push me so far. And the bad side of you can only push me so far is like genocide and lynchings. Like that's what people associate and that's what people generally associate. There are other symbols where you can take pride in your unwillingness to be controlled by the government. Like, you are fucked. Again, okay, so let's talk about, like, the framing of people against you rather than the framing of policy against you as an individual. You look at the policies which will eventually, that you're terrified of negatively affecting you, like a wage or, I mean, I'm coming from a poverty mindset. Sorry, universe. Give me money. Give me food. Policies which do not act in your favor have been associated with, example, Black people and Indigenous people, and because they've been fucked by policies and they've been fucked to the point of being terrified that you're next, you associate disgust and fear with those people who are more negatively affected by shitty fucking policy. You're not racist, you're just fucking stupid. Like, you just are misattributing the fucking problem to people who have as little control over the government policies as you do in the way of whether or not they're getting fucked by the system. You know what doesn't matter? Who's fucking who? You know who doesn't care? You know what you should not be talking about? Other people's kids' vaginas. Don't talk about children's vaginas. Don't talk about children's penises unless they are your own kids and you're having that conversation with your kids. Don't talk about kids' genitals to your friends. Don't talk about them to anybody but your doctors. It's weird to talk about kids' private parts, right? You felt really uncomfortable when I said a child's vagina, correct? Good. Stop talking about people's private parts. It's fucking weird. Now on to Nazis, right? That's what I was talking about.
Revolutionary one, the yellow one.
Yeah.
Pick a different symbol. It's okay to hate your government for what it does to you. But you want to be a communist. You don't want to be a racist, right? You want to be someone who like celebrates humanity. You don't want to be someone who thinks it's okay for the government to kill people, right? You're not like that. You're not weird. You don't want to be controlled by your government. That's what I'm getting from that. Are you an anarchist or are you a racist? Are you anti-fascist or are you a racist? Like pick a symbol that means better than what you are associating yourself with.
With the snake. I think that they're very
His face
similar.
makes me
They
laugh.
can only push me so far.
Georgia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say about what Mike said. He was just talking about how, you know, there were certain things that, like, he wanted to associate with the flag, but you can't really, like, only associate, like, your Southern heritage with the flag. You have to, like, associate everything. You have to go with the Southern heritage. You have to go with the slavery. You have to go with seceding. And, like, you can't, you know, take part of the flag and say, this is what I'm for. You have to go for all of it.
You can't take parts of the, you know, free speech and say, only if it doesn't offend me.
Okay.
You can't do
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. That's literally the law. Maybe I'm thinking about like the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where people's like safety is more important than the freedom to say fucked up shit. Like, okay, like you're not allowed to post on social media, I'm gonna kill the president. You're not allowed, because you get they pick that shit up and they count that as a threat. I'm not going to. I don't care, okay? Now I'm nervous because I said those words out loud. Not out of context, please. I have a child. Oh yeah, you go to jail for life. Don't you? Isn't that treason or some shit? You get sent to murder for treason, like going against your country. Why is racism and encouraging racism, the association, whether you mean to or not a form of treason against your country and your people? Fuck, it's so fucking weird. You have to take everything, and also that's a false equivalent. Those are not the same thing. You can't. I don't know why he asked that question. Like, why was that question asked?
You can't, you know, take part of the flag and say, this is what I'm for. You have to go for all of it.
You can't take parts of the, you know, free speech and say, only if it doesn't offend me.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can't do that.
Yes, sir. And then I'll come back to you.
Well,
Why can you? Why can't you? That didn't give me a reason. Yeah, you didn't really make an argument there. You just said, well, you're not allowed. Why? Why not? Why not? Because it's not free speech? Too bad. Yes, it is. Maybe you need to be trained better. Just as a person. Yuck. Like, when your parents tell you not to swear as a child, you're not gonna be like, oh, my right to fuck you, Mom. Like, you're not, that's fucking weird. You get trained to act properly in public, and it's not an infringement on your right to say whatever the fuck you want. It's training you to be a useful and meaningful participant in society, rather than a fear-mongering detriment to the world in the long run. Like, you are wasting your life being a piece of shit and thinking piece of shit thoughts. You could be so fucking useful.
people in the South, like, I feel like they've recognized that
people may see it as it represents racism, but it just represents their whole culture as as a whole. Like, they accept all of that, they accept that that happened in the past, but they're not, like, that was their heritage, that's what happened in, like, their ancestors and all that. So they're gonna keep that as, like, their family
And
heritage.
to your statement, sir, then what do you say to Southern blacks who want to represent their heritage? How do they feel about that flag? Why don't they fly?
Well, because it might have affected them in a negative way, but it could have also affected a bunch of people, not just necessarily blacks, but everyone in a negative way. So it should be a free choice whether you want to fly it or not.
Mr. Yost?
You know?
I didn't really understand that. I think he could have taken a little bit longer to answer the question. Just be like, oh, I don't have an answer for that. By the way, it's okay to not have an answer for things. It's okay to not have an opinion on everything. It's okay to not spend 2 hours on 18 minutes of a 55-minute flag debate. As a Canadian, as a prairie Canadian. Let me try that again.
Yes, sir, and then I'll come back.
Well, people in the South, like, I feel like they've recognized that people may see it as it represents racism, but it just represents their whole culture as a whole.
Okay. This flag represents Southern culture as a whole. To those specific Southerners, just because a minority finds it offensive, just because a minority doesn't find it offensive.
Like, they accept all of that, they accept that that happened in the past, but they're not, like, that was their heritage, that's what happened in, like, their ancestors and all that. So they're gonna keep that as, like, their family heritage.
And to your statement.
Okay. So, I'm here. Like, association. Okay, so I guess, like, in the same way that people hold on to generational souvenirs, like your mother's blanket or your Nazi grandfather's hat, his little weird badge. I guess the Confederate flag is like an old Nazi uniform where you can't really find it in your heart to throw it out, but you know you... Oh, but it... I don't know. Okay, no. Because kind of. I don't know where I'm going with this thought. I don't care.
Sir, then what do you say to Southern blacks who want to represent their heritage? How do they feel about that flag? Why?
I mean, I wonder if that's a question to ask this child. Hey, how does what the fuck? How does all ancestors and enslaved people of America, how do all of Black America feel about their heritage during the slave trade? How do they want to be represented? What an intense question to ask a child.
And to your statement,
I don't know,
sir, then
ask
what
a
do you
black
say to
person.
Southern
Like,
blacks?
what the fuck? I don't know. How on earth is this kid supposed to know what a Black American with history in the slave trade? And also, Black people aren't a fucking monolith. What? What a question.
Want to represent their heritage? How do they feel about that flag? Why don't they fly?
Well, because it might have affected them in a negative way, but it could have also affected a bunch of people, not just necessarily blacks, but everyone in a negative way. So it should be a free choice whether you want to fly it or not.
Mr. Yost?
Okay.
No, like, as George...
So he's like, yeah, bad things happened, and the Confederate flag associates itself to those bad things because of when it was used to represent a symbol of racism. Yes, that whole symbology made people feel bad, but just because you felt bad doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to display the thing that damaged your genetics, that put you at a greater disadvantage because of itself, because of the laws, because of the anti-human perspective on Black people in America. And that's not even to talk about, like, I don't know shit about indigenous people in America. I don't know shit about like Chinese immigrants or Japanese immigrants. I know Canada got a bunch of Japanese and Chinese immigrants and fucking hated them. And like I'm like, oh, when was my building built? Who did this? Whose hands? Who died for this? Yeah, I don't know anything about slaves in Canada. And I'm sure there are fucking slaves in Canada. I just don't know anything about it. That's a loaded question to ask a child.
Georgia was saying we have to look at every aspect whether you want to fly it or not, but everyone in a negative way. So it should be
Okay.
a free.
No. Yeah, see, that's kind of weird. Like, do poor white people who were fucked by the Civil War associate positive memories to the flag or negative memories to the flag? And if it represents negative memories to the flag, then why would you want to be reminded of that all the time at any point in time? I feel like if you're going to display something, you display it again because you are proud of it. You show a form of pride. You're not gonna put a framed picture of nothing. I'm just imagining like, oh, you're an aborted fetus or something. You're not gonna display all of the pain and the trauma and the violence that you've experienced in your life in a traumatic way around your, yes, you are, but in a different way. You don't want to be reminded of it unless you hate yourself when you experience something negative. So what are the positive things that are being associated with a Confederate flag? Some people are like, hell yeah, racism. Some people are like, I sure liked the slavery part, or the war crime part, the domestic terrorism was cool. What are you reminding yourself of when you display the Confederate flag?
Choice whether you want to fly it or not.
Mr. Yost?
You know,
Yeah,
like
of course
as
it's a
Georgia was
choice.
saying, we have to look at every aspect of the flag. And she mentioned slavery and stuff. She didn't mention the unfair treatment by the North, and also the.
Because what is the unfair treatment? You're not making any sense. You haven't explained what the unfair treatment was. And again, I think I said earlier, sometime in these 2 hours and 12 minutes, that like eye for an eye, violence begetting violence equal to the circumstance, equal to each other, you know? Like, I want to know, like, first off, slavery is bad. Why was the North, I don't know the history, why was the North getting in fights with the South? Was it about slavery? If it was about slavery, if the North was like, hey, if Canada was like, hey, slavery bad, and you were like, no, we like them, and then got into a fight about it.
Mentioned the unfair treatment by.
Yeah, don't most people associate it? I don't know. I know you're trying to do like this whole, why didn't you think of the North when you were thinking about the slave trade? But I think it's because that's not what people associate with the Confederate flag, right?
By the North, and also the. I keep blanking out. It was wait. I had something I was going to
But I
say.
think so.
She said in schools what we're taught, like everyone knows history is written by the victors, so we're taught to focus on the slavery. I think if the other side would have won, then absolutely we'd be focusing on, we'd look at this North poorly, and we'd
I probably would.
they were.
That's not really an argument.
Written by the victors, so we're taught to.
Also, okay, so if okay. If the slave owners had won, I guess we would be like, I mean, you wouldn't be, your professor teacher wouldn't look like that for sure. Yeah, he would look like that, but a little different, you know? Like, I can't agree that that statement is okay, or that that even makes sense. Let me hear you say that again. If it were different, then it wouldn't be the same.
Wait, I had something I was gonna
But I
say.
think so.
She said in schools, what we're taught, like everyone knows history is written by the victors, so we're taught to focus on the slavery. I think if the other side would have won, then absolutely we'd be focusing on, we'd look at this North poorly, and we'd.
And I probably.
They would.
Be teaching you if I was if the South
Yeah, you
won,
see?
But I think so.
She said in schools, what we're taught, like everyone knows history is written by the victors, so we're taught to focus on the slavery. I think if the other side would have won.
You should focus on the slavery. If the other side had won, then it would not, the textbooks would say slavery good. Like, do you or do you not believe that slavery is bad? Whether you're fighting or not, whether you are fighting or not, the thing that you're fighting about, its impact on other human beings, on other living things, but its impact on other human beings is going to determine whether or not you're doing the right thing. If you're on the side that's like, hell yeah, slavery, and you are raping women, and you are killing black people, you are dragging black people, like, you saw Antebellum. You must have seen Antebellum. Ugh, it made me sick. No spoilers. Watch it. History's written by the victor, bitch. What the fuck are you saying? Who won in the game of slavery? Who's winning that? What the fuck? God. It's just, that seems strange. That's weird.
Won, then absolutely we'd be focusing on, we'd look at this North poorly, and we'd.
And I probably wouldn't be teaching you if the South would have won. I'd probably be showing somewhere else. Alright?
Can I have like 3 examples of what else the Civil War was about that was not slavery?
This is an argument about the Civil War.
Okay, yeah, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag was about.
I think so far we've had a pretty good discussion. Alright?
Okay, so what was the first sign of heated? What was the point that was brought up that was heated? So 20 minutes. There's been no cuts on this. This is really good. This is really interesting. 19 minutes and 10 seconds in. 19:10.
There's no reason to get.
Okay, so what it was this guy, the thing that broke the discussion flow to an extent was this comment of this kid being like, yeah, but like if the slave owners won, then things would be different. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. Not a good argument, as we all agreed. And so teacher's like, hey, we wouldn't be having this discussion. I would not be here. Same, buddy. And then the girl in the green, sorry, Isabel, maybe? Cute toes. Isabel, asked the question, name 3 things. Name 3 things. And I don't have a problem with that question. However, I do think that this kid should have answered. He should have answered, because his defense is, well, the war was about more than just slavery. What are you talking about? And I mean, even if you could name 2 other things which Americans would associate the war with, that could renormalize the definition that we associate with the Confederate flag, if you could redefine the Confederate flag, what are the 3 other parts of the Civil War that you associate with that flag? And this kid should have answered because he's the one who's on the civil flag. Righteousness, his free speech thing. So he's like, yeah, people deserve to. So his position is, yes, people should be allowed to display the flag. Yes, people should be allowed to display the flag because it doesn't mean what other people think it means. But this entire class is like, well, wait, yes, it does. Does it not? It definitely does. So like, and earlier that kid was like, oh, if such a small percentage of people are whatever are offended, then why should we? Majority it sounds like of people in this classroom are not cool with the Confederate flag.
Slavery. I think if the other side would have won, then absolutely we'd be focusing on, we'd look at this North poorly.
That was very funny.
I probably wouldn't be teaching you if the South would have won. I'd probably be showing somewhere else. All right?
Can I have like 3 examples of what else the Civil War was about that was not slavery? Okay, yeah, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag was about.
Okay, so I wish I could hear like what she's responding to.
Okay, yeah, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag was about. That was not slavery. Okay, yeah, it is.
This isn't, what did he say? This isn't a ba 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 da 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 da.
Okay, yeah.
This isn't an argument about the Civil War. That's what that sounds like. Yeah, this isn't an argument about the Civil War is what that sounds like he's saying. This isn't an argument about the Civil War.
Examples of what else the Civil War was about that was not slavery. Okay, yeah, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag was about.
So kid says this isn't about the Civil War, and she's like, yes, it is, because that's what the Confederate flag comes from. If the Confederate flag stems from a war which is predominantly about the fight to keep slavery going, then that is what that flag is going to be associated with. But if you are arguing that there is more to the Civil War than just the whole slavery thing, you should be able to provide examples of things that should be associated as well with the Confederate flag, aside from just slavery. Okay, that makes sense to me. I agree. And if it's going to be your argument, you should be able to list at least 3 other examples of the thing that you are so adamant is true. I don't know anything. I agree.
I think so far we've had a pretty good discussion. All right? So there's no reason to get out of control.
I mean, I just feel like that's a legitimate question since the Confederate flag came from the Civil War. I feel like that's a legitimate question. What else does it stand for? Like, what specific states' rights issues are you talking about? And, like, how do you feel like you're being pushed? In what ways are you being pushed that you feel the need to fly the Confederate flag? Like, personally.
Yeah.
Mandated by the government?
Okay, like, in what instance?
Give it to them, let's go. Well.
Hi. Okay. So, had asked, ow. Was that you? You good? Sorry. Yeah, what do you have to rebel about? What are you rebelling against that this flag symbolizes for you?
Like, being pushed.
What are you rebelling against that this flag symbolizes for you?
In what ways are you being pushed that you feel the need to fly the Confederate flag? Like personally.
Mandated by the government.
Mandated by the government. Mandated by the government. By the government. That's not a full sentence. What do you mean, mandated by the government?
Okay, like in what instance?
Give it to him, let's go.
Well, well, if we want to talk about how states' rights and how all this stuff, you want to have freedom in what you believe in, right?
Okay, like specifically though.
Specifically, okay. So, not everyone.
Okay, so she's looking for specific examples of beliefs which are being suppressed by the government of yours. What are the things that you believe in which are being suppressed by the government? How are you being negatively affected? There's like a like a tea leaf on my throat hole. That's such a weird feeling. Tea leaf on my throat hole.
One
Yes, what specific beliefs? How is your First Amendment right being oppressed?
is entitled to health care, but yet we think that everyone is entitled to health care. Not everyone is entitled to slavery.
Whoa,
because-
wait, what?
Specifically, okay. So, not everyone is entitled to health care, but yet we think that everyone is entitled to health care.
Why are some people not inherently entitled to health care? What does that mean? What do you mean some people don't deserve health care? Who doesn't deserve health care? That is a statement that needs to be explored by this kid a lot more, a lot deeper. This very able-bodied boy is going to become a crippled man at some point in time. Accessibility to health services are an entitlement to all human beings. All people are entitled to free health care because you're alive and you deserve to be alive. A lack of provision of free health care is a form of violence against the poor and violence against people who have been made to be poor by policies which were celebrated by the people who fucking love the Confederate flag. This is a very fucking problematic. Not everybody deserves health care. Who doesn't deserve health care? I need clarity on that one.
Not everyone is entitled to health care, but yet
Weird.
we think that everyone is entitled to health care. Not everyone is entitled to slavery because we got rid of that, right?
Not everybody is entitled to slavery because we got rid of that. What are you saying? Okay, good. Thank fuck, man. Alright, cool. Not everybody is entitled to slavery because we got rid of that. What was his first one? The only reason we don't do slavery is because it's against the law? Is that your argument?
Because we got here, but yet we think specifically, okay, so not everyone is entitled to health care, but yet we think that everyone is entitled to health care. Not everyone is entitled to slavery because we got rid of that, right?
Not everybody is entitled to slavery because we got rid of it. Okay, that's cool. I want to hear his explanation. Okay.
Hold on. It's the same thing. Back in the South, Southerners thought that slavery was their right. Now we think that healthcare is our right.
So you're likening slavery to Obamacare?
Well,
They are not the same thing. Healthcare is an inherent right to you because you get to control your body for the longest amount of time possible when you get access to the things that you need to survive well, for your body health, your body's ability to live, to stay alive. Slave ownership is taking the autonomy away from Black people and turning them into parts of the machine, dehumanizing them into being laborers for you at no cost, at absolutely no cost. Not only, okay, let me be so, honestly, imagine, like, if we still had slave labor, all the poor people would probably still, would, like, be slaves, and corporate people would be, like, raping us all. I mean, they already are, but they'd be doing it a lot more physically, a lot more memorable than they do now with their corporate theft. I don't think that you can, those are not equal comparisons. Healthcare is a human right. Housing is a human right. Slaves are not a human right. You are not inherently deserving of control of another person's body. That's it. I don't think I need to end that sentence, because I think that could just be the end. I think that's a good way to end that sentence.
We're talking about we're talking about big government and we're talking about states' rights. You can compare the two.
You can't. You should not. You can't and you shouldn't. You cannot compare the two and you shouldn't compare the two.
Healthcare is our right.
So you're likening slavery to Obamacare?
Well, we're talking about we're talking about big government and we're talking about states' rights. You can compare.
So, to meet your argument where you're at, let's imagine that slavery comes back. Let's say slavery makes its big second debut. We want a sequel. We want a sequel. Let's say slavery comes back, part 2. And it's not black people who are slaves now, but it's you. Gingers. Little. So we have 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2, all because states' rights. I know, you know what, that feels like not an argument, but I mean, like, they're not the same. It's just not the same. I can't make my brain equalize those. 2032. Okay, I don't think he's dumb. I think he just had a misassociation. Yeah, your inherent right to things that help you live is not the same as a written right to steal the bodily autonomy away from another human being. And it's not, state rights don't give you permission to fuck women without their consent and to have their babies without their consent and to put people to work without fairly compensating them. That is a human rights abuse. States' rights versus human rights, I guess maybe is like there's something there about states' rights versus human rights and how that kid was like confusing the two. Like the states have more rights than you do as a person. Okay, that's kind of dangerous mindset. Okay.
Well, like maybe in 100 years.
Wait, let's go, Raymond.
Okay, so
Listen up.
I think what I'm getting from what Hayden said was that slavery was okay because they thought it was moral, but slavery was never moral. And so you linking someone to be able to go to the hospital and being able to afford their cancer treatment has nothing to do with slavery being okay back in the South.
And owning people.
Owning people
And
will
owning
never be
people.
okay. And so I feel like
And owning people.
treatment has nothing to do with slavery being okay back in the South.
And owning people.
Owning people will never be okay. And so I feel like
I would like to see if there's gonna be a girl who's like, yeah, but slavery. Yeah, but like, what about slavery? I'm curious about the demographics. You already know this. All the girls sitting down. This is very interesting. And their questions and their responses and their answers. I think we could look at the people playing advocate for the racist flag, you know, trying very hard to defend that position with the choice of not, if they decide to not listen to the people who represent individuals who have gone through the fucked up shit that the symbols of history represent, they choose not to change their opinion. It is what it is, but that is an unfortunate possibility here.
When you say that you'll only take parts of the flag, of the Confederate flag, you forget that, like, to a moral was that.
Listen up.
I think what I'm getting from what Hayden said was that slavery was okay because they thought it was moral, but slavery was never moral. And so you linking someone to be able to go to the
Her right
hospital,
here, she's so
being
funny.
able to afford their, slavery was okay because they thought it was moral, but slavery was never moral. And so you linking someone to be able to go to the hospital and being able to afford their cancer treatment has nothing to do with slavery being okay back in the South.
And owning people.
Owning people will never be okay. And so I feel like when you say that you'll only take part.
Okay, I know people are like, oh, they're a lost generation, but I have like such high hope for our youth. I know this was 8 years ago, but I feel like this is a conversation that can and does get had. Whoa, the color outside is unusual. It's not blue at night right now. It's kind of like an orange. I have faith in our youth, in our generations.
Parts of the flag, of the Confederate flag, you forget that, like, it also, you know, just the fact that slavery is okay. And so I feel like if you say that someone's pushing you, like, who exactly is pushing you? Just like Drake, like, who are you, who's pushing you?
So this is the second time that this question has been asked. And this is specifically being asked again to Drake, kind of to like hold him accountable to his point of view, hold him accountable to his perspective and the meaning behind these flags and these bumper stickers. Would he ever put a Confederate flag on his car? Yes or no? Yes, because he's proud, or no, because he's afraid? What is he afraid of? But what specifically is he trying to push back against, and what value does that have in the world, in his world?
Like who?
And I really appreciate that she asked this question again and made sure that it was directed at someone who could probably give a cohesive answer rather than 4 words that he's heard on the news without contemplating the actual meaning of them. Mandated by the government? What? Everything is mandated by the government. You're looking at the wrong policies, bruh.
How is the government pushing you? What are they doing to Drake?
What is the government doing to Drake? I love her.
Obamacare.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Is Obamacare directly affecting you?
Okay, and can I say, I'm loving 20 minutes in after having lots of boy talk. We're getting much more women participation. This is good to see. Oh, it's almost been 3 hours. I have to go to the bathroom.
I think, honestly, I think like if you ever take a history class, they tell you that this part of our history.
That's interesting. The girl in the green who questioned the boys first came to join the girls as well, it looks like. Oh, did you want me to comment on that? Probably not. Obamacare. Again, this is just like, what does that mean to you? You're a child. What does the healthcare system mean to you? You're a child. You've never had to be fucked by the healthcare system or benefited by it. I mean, with conversations like this, the fact that your school is able to afford all this video camera stuff, the fact that your class is predominantly white people, able to have this discussion and have this discussion go viral. 4.5 million views. SM East Harbinger. That sounds like a classy school. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I'm gonna let my presumptions guide me and say, what the fuck do you know? I mean, not to be judgmental, but I'm gonna be a little bit judgmental because what the fuck do you know about Obamacare, about healthcare, about accessing the things that you need or struggling to access the things that you need? What do you know?
How is the government pushing you? What are they doing to Drake?
Obamacare.
Oh my God.
Wait, no, I want to hear from other people too. Hey, Lydia.
Green. Yeah, there she is. This is so fascinating. Just like observing behaviors and everything of the people.
Okay, I think like if you ever take a history class, they tell you that this part of our history is like a shameful part, and I think it should be left in the past because it's kind of irrelevant now. And I mean, if you want to like fight for your freedom, that's great, but you don't have to do that here in public because obviously it's going to cause more problems. Like, than if you were just to fly it at home. Like, that's your freedom of speech, it's your right, but like, in a public process.
We got a kid right here who's been waiting having his hand for a long time.
Okay, so she came back to the whole, yeah, do what you want, but in public you're affecting more than just yourself. And so there are going to be consequences whether you care about them or not. And the fact that you don't care about them is like very anti-human. It's very like abnormal and maladaptive to be someone who cares so much more about yourself and your weird pride than about the effect that your pride for your hate or your symbol of hate has on the people around you.
I have 3 questions for the Miss in the Green. What is your name, first off? Okay, Isabel, do you pledge allegiance to the American flag?
Okay. I have 3 questions. So why? Why is he coming for her? Why is he asking her questions? Her questions were name 3 other things that the Civil War was about. Name 3 other things that the Civil War was about, and what are you fighting for? That was her 2 questions that she put towards the guy defending the Confederate flag. So first question is, do you pledge allegiance to the flag? I think in the context of a high school, this is kind of an unfair question because you are currently in the middle of being indoctrinated, and being abnormal in high school or refusing indoctrination in high school is a reason to get fucking bullied. And this girl is not an ugly girl, but she is not what you expect from the media. She looks like a high schooler, and also she doesn't look like what people want out of a high schooler, you know. The being a woman sucks. So why am I bringing that up? Yeah, I don't know what her answer is going to be in response to, do you pledge allegiance to the flag? But I do think that that's kind of an unfair question to pose to a kid, again, because being weird, being different, and saying no to indoctrination can put you in danger. Oh my God. Stop. And oh yeah, my thought was, it's possible that she would be in danger already because I know what it's like to be bullied for being fat. Like, she's a beautiful woman, but high school fucking sucks. I mean, they all look like high schoolers. They look like regular people. Maybe I just don't see people enough to be like, yep, that's a human.
Because obviously it's going to cause more problems, like, than if you were just to fly it at home. Like, that's your freedom of speech. If you want to, like, fight for your freedom, that's great, but you don't have to do that here in public because obviously it's going to cause more problems, like, than if you were just to fly it at home. Like, that's your freedom of speech, it's your right, but, like, in a public place.
We got a kid right here who's been wanting to have his hand up for a long time.
I have 3 questions for the Miss in the Green. What is your name, first off?
Isabel.
Okay, Isabel, do you pledge allegiance to the American flag?
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Do you know that when we left Britain to come over here, we took land from the...
Okay. This, I believe, if I... What is that? Are you good? Okay, he's fine. Logical fallacy. Do you do this? Yes. Well, don't you know that what you're doing is bad? Bad argument. Bad argument. Not, again, you are a lot of the times shamed into pledging allegiance in elementary and in, I don't know if they still do it in high school, but if your school plays the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of class, you are very likely to stand up and do the thing. Pledge your allegiance, whether you mean it or not, because it has been done every day since you were in kindergarten. You have that shit memorized. I'm sure some of you have had that, like, horrible dream where you are saying the Pledge of Allegiance. You, like, wake up in the middle of the night sweating. I don't know the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'm not even gonna pretend. But I don't think that this is I don't think that's an appropriate question. And if what I think he's going to say is what he's going to say, I don't think this is a good argument. Don't you know that blah 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 and you're just like, you little Hitler youth, look at you.
You know that when we left Britain to come over here, we took land from the American Indians?
Yeah, I do know that.
And do you know that also that the flag that we fly also kind of stands for hatred, and that we took land from other people, and that we...
Yeah, but you've nationalized, you have iconicized the American flag. You've turned it into a commodification where women wear it on bikinis. You have turned... Is it idolatry? I never know. You know what I'm fucking saying. You have changed. You have such, like, a different relationship to the American flag than you do to the Confederate flag. As well, you don't even really know the extent of violence that was done against Indigenous people of the United States. To what extent do you really understand? I think one of the reasons why people can find more ease in liking the American flag versus the Confederate flag is because there is such a prominent population of Black Americans, and that is recent enough in memory and in written record that, like, why? Of course, yes, you know that there was Indigenous genocide in the United States of America. However, and not to dismiss, not a dismissive however, but a however that is going into in recency and in terms of, like, acceptable to talk about in class. Slaves were only super recently freed, and the history had to be written about the experiences. But there are, like, where are all the Indigenous people in the United States of America? They're dead. They're dead. Where the fuck are they? Where are they? Why don't I ever see Indigenous Americans? Like, oh no, I know that that's a me thing. I'm aware that there is not nearly enough literal representation in media. When the fuck would I ever come across a literal Native American? Like, America. United States American. I know lots of Indigenous people from Canada, know the history and all that, but like, there's not enough in your popular media. It's a lot more of like the Black American experience and not the Native American experience in your popular media. So what else am I supposed to know if I don't get taught the history? I know what I know based on what it is that I'm shown. And everything I don't know, how am I supposed to know that I don't know if you don't tell me? Anyway, I don't think this is a fair line of questioning. I actually think it's stupid.
We've been living in land that technically wasn't ours to take. So why are you only holding partial facts?
What are you clapping for? Let him finish the question first off. Also, is this about the Confederate flag or is it about the American flag? I guess it could be about both, but they're not the same. They're just not, it's not the same. It's literally just not the same. Your association to it is completely different. You literally do not have an association until you get trained to have an association of violence with the American flag and not nationalism. Of course, you're going to associate a flag which so directly is connected to racism, rape, and murder of Black people. Like, of course, you're going to have a much more negative reaction to that. You have been indoctrinated into American nationalism and not into Confederate American nationalism.
Why are you only holding facts to the partial facts to the Southern flag when people fly this for freedom and they don't also fly it for people stealing from
What are you clapping for? Why are they clapping?
You fly that flag every day for freedom, but we can't because it only stands for slavery in your mind.
What are you fighting for? Yes, it stands for slavery. Interesting that you asked the white girl, screamed at the white girl. Why don't you ask the Black girl sitting right next to her? Why didn't you scream that shit at the girl whose mother's mother was affected by the violence of slavery as represented by that Confederate flag? Oh, and this person taking a picture. I guess, I mean, you gotta catch it. You gotta catch it. I get it. But I just don't think it's appropriate to be encouraging bad lines of questioning. And also, literally, what is this group? Who's clapping and what are you clapping for? What are you clapping for? You're like, yeah, see? Let's do racism. People should. People should. What are you arguing in defense of? Why don't you... Okay, there we go. But what about, what aboutism? There we go. That's what I was trying to think of. This kid's like, oh, you don't like the Confederate flag? What about the American flag? She didn't say none of that. You just presumed. You didn't ask any questions. You were loaded questions, leading questions, nothing with curiosity. I don't think you actually added anything to this. And I think I hope you've learned to not be like that, not be like that, you know? Yuck. Yuck.
You can fly that flag every day for freedom, but we can't because it only stands for slavery in your mind.
I don't take my flag and go on Indian reservations and wave it around and be like, look what I stand for. I don't do that. Okay, I don't do that. What Drake does and what all of you who wave the Confederate flag in front of any African American students at East, you're condoning that and you're openly telling them that you accept the racism that they have faced and continue to face by you. I know all of you that make fun of the we too are East thing, all of you do that. I hear you do it. It is absurd. And for you to sit here and be like, it's okay because of states' rights and try to condone your own racist actions is absurd. Like, that is so ridiculous. And you can sit there and laugh at me, Drake, but you are being bigoted. And I think, like, the general American population that, like, is actually educated would agree with that. Maybe not all of us here at Shawnee Mission East that live in this bubble, but, like, I'm sorry that you're gonna continue to do that.
I don't wave my flag on Indian reservations. Yeah. Fair. Okay. Okay, do I push back on that? What do I have to push back on? It's not the same because I don't go fly my flag on Indian reservations the same way that people who fly their flag, Confederate flag, in black neighborhoods or whatever, or people who do racist shit in the name of the flag. Like, it's not the same but different. Wrong conversation. Like, that's an important conversation to have, definitely. The history of violence against Indigenous people is essential for people to know, otherwise you end up stupid like me. And you lack compassion like I do. If you don't understand history and its impact, you turn into a fucking monster. You turn into someone who defends racism. You don't need to do that. It is, I think, almost more interesting to look at, like, okay, why is it that you were just having the conversation about the Confederate flag and not the American flag? That is a good conversation to have. Why is it that the erasure of Indigenous experiences in early America are not talked about in the same way that the Black American experience is talked about? Again, like, historical erasure. And as someone who I love being fed cultural information. I love hearing about perspectives in the history of the world and how we have come to be where it is that we are. Where the fuck is all the information on, where's all the interesting delivery of information? Where's all the debate on Indigenous America and that history? I mean, no, you don't have to debate your life and your existence just to, like, I can go look in a book, but where do I look? You know? You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Where do you even begin? That's a good conversation to be had, though, at a point in time. So it is, wait, I'm gonna read. Oh, there's, like, nothing to read about it. Okay, so these guys all go to school together, and this is what I mean by mob mentality, right? Like, why are you cheering? Why are you cheering? What are you excited about? Y'all are hooting and hollering like it's a motherfucking your football game. It's your prom night. You're like, why are you acting like that? You're cheering on bad. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand.
I'll point on what Isabel said.
flying the Confederate flag in front of any African American that sees it, and you were kind of using that to back off on the American flag and the Native Americans.
No, I didn't. I said I don't do that. So.
No. But my point is, we fly the American flag everywhere. So any Native American that walks around, you're gonna see the American flag almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, so maybe you guys should change the flag. Maybe if your entire country is based on racism and genocide, if the whole symbol that you've commodified turned into your fancy look at us flag waving, are you waving that flag because you're proud of being an American, or are you waving that flag because you're a fucking racist? Yeah, maybe you should change the flag. Maybe you should be embarrassed that your entire nation is based has been laying over the bodies of indigenous people. Like, I don't understand these arguments. Maybe I'll let him finish.
The American flag and the Native American use it, and you were kind of using that to back off on the American flag and the Native Americans.
No, I didn't. I said I don't do that. So.
No. But my point is, we fly the American flag everywhere. So any Native American that walks around, you're gonna see the American flag almost on a daily basis.
Yes.
So does that not represent your entire, background? I'm just.
What?
The American flag everywhere. So any Native American that walks around, you're gonna see the American flag almost on a daily basis. So does that not represent your entire, background?
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Let's go here. Yes, ma'am. Let's.
So the Native Americans. Okay. So the Native Americans used to use swastika as a peace symbol, and after World War II and everything that went off with Hitler, they realized that the swastika had a different connotation, so they stopped using it. Just like when you look at the Confederate flag, you realize that it doesn't have the connotation that the American flag does. When you see the Confederate flag, you think of slavery, and there's so many different symbols for Southern pride and freedom, but the fact that you choose the one that already has the negative connotation, like you could use any other symbol to represent freedom and like Southern pride or whatever you're trying to do with it. I really don't understand why you feel a need to throw it, and if it's like freedom of speech, like, I don't think that people really understand the freedom of speech, like, what it is. Because, like, when I'm saying don't wave your Confederate flag, like, the government isn't telling me to do that. I'm saying that, and I'm using my freedom of speech to argue against, like, I don't think that people understand.
I mean, you can't use your freedom of speech to argue against freedom of speech.
That's literally... What? She's not arguing against freedom of speech. She's not arguing against freedom of speech. She's arguing against your bigoted language, which is like shitty and hateful. She's arguing against you. Like, you're not... You just suck. She just doesn't like that you exist as a person, which I think might be fair.
You say, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to fly your flag or whatever, but you're using the same right that we are using.
Can I ask a
I'm saying that you shouldn't do it because it's stupid.
Okay, so I want to ask a specific question. Can I ask a specific question?
Yeah.
Because we have obviously a lot of you in here who support the Confederate flag. In what way, on a personal level, do you feel tied to Southern heritage and what the Confederate flag represents?
Do you not feel any?
I just want to know.
I don't.
So why do you fly the flag?
Yeah.
Because it's a symbol of you can't push me anymore.
Okay.
Let's say something real quick.
No, I'm just, because, all right, I have a question for and then I'll come back to you. I have a wife from the South. My wife is from Memphis, where she sees the Confederate flag on a regular basis. And her question, when I told her about this conversation, she was like, but they live in Kansas. And if they're gonna take,
Yeah, the South.
no, let me finish, Chris. It's my turn. It's my turn. I want to talk. Respect the argument. I want to talk. So.
That's funny.
Quiet.
Her we're good. All right. So her argument was that if they're gonna take Southern heritage, they gotta take all of Southern heritage. You can't just represent one part of Southern heritage and say, well, this part over here, I don't represent that, right? Just like we're saying we have to represent the entire of the American flag and what it's representing now and what it's evolved to represent. So what has the Confederate flag evolved to represent now that is so relevant to your somewhat privileged Prairie Village life?
I mean,
Oh, so it is a nice school.
I've never supported the Confederate flag. I don't own one. I don't fly one. I'm supporting the right to do it.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yes, sir.
I think that this conversation.
Well, it's good to be clear. I guess it's good to be clear about that. By the way, I don't like racism. I just support your ability to be racist.
Has turned into whether or not you can fly the flag as to why people do fly the flag. And I think under the First Amendment, pretty much you're right, whether it be good or not, that
Absolutely.
you can fly the flag.
Yeah.
And to argue against why people fly the flag, that's kind of their belief. And I think debating about it is never going to change the way they feel, because obviously it's a minority opinion among most Americans. And they feel I think they feel backed into the corner, and whether or not aggressively arguing that they're wrong isn't going to change their opinion. And I think that this debate has shown how heated it gets, and that it's a controversial opinion in the United States. And I don't think that's going to change for a while. And I think it just takes time.
Yeah. And he makes a good.
I wonder if he's scared. Because it's kind of terrifying to live in, a society that thinks it's okay to just be fucking shooting people in the streets. Oh, there's about to be, a most repeated coming up right away. I want to hear him again.
I think that this conversation has turned into whether or not you can fly the flag as to why people do fly the flag. And I think under the First Amendment, pretty much you're right, whether it be good or not, that
Absolutely.
you can fly the flag.
Yeah.
And to argue against why people fly the flag, that's kind of their belief. And I think debating about it is never going to change the way they feel, because obviously it's a minority opinion among most Americans.
I agree that debating about something is not going to change a person's opinion, because you go into that interaction like it's a debate and not like it's a conversation. Conversation allows you a lot more freedom to hear what the other person is saying without being too heavily attached to or too heavily identifying with your side. When you debate, there is an expectation in it, especially, you heard the cheering and the jeering, right? There's a sort of showmanship and a dominance when people have something to say, or they feel like they become the smartest person in the room. I think this is a fair point to bring up, where he's we're not on the point that we had earlier, where it's oh, should we fly the flag? No. But is it our right to? Yes. But then how far does that right go? And I do think that society is smart in having restrictions on freedoms to an extent. Otherwise, why have laws at all?
And they feel I think they feel backed into the corner, and whether or not aggressively arguing that they're wrong isn't going to change their opinion. And I think that this debate has shown how heated it gets, and that it's a controversial opinion in the United States. And I don't think that's going to change for a while. And I think it just takes time.
Yeah. And he makes a good point, because whether we like it or disagree or not, you do have a right to fly that flag, and you do have a right to wear the flag. You can even wear it at East. The administration and the district has said that you have a right to fly the flag and wear the flag as long as it doesn't disrupt whatever is going on. Okay, so, yes, sir.
I have a question for Ms. Holloway.
Okay.
All right.
Let's not turn this back.
Ms. Holloway, you said that if I take a history class here at East, I'll learn, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Wait.
Let him get his backward views out.
Why do I feel like that was the fucking nerd? A little Hitler Youth nerd. You want to know what doesn't convince people to agree with you? Is that. It's so simple. Conversation is how you make change. Compassion is how you make change. Shame, when there's nothing else, helps, but this is a very vulnerable state for this boy to be in, right? He's publicly expressing himself. He is developing his perspective and having his perspective be challenged. And that is, I mean, that's hard to do. It's embarrassing to do. And especially as a teenager. It's hard to have opinions, but, you know, if you're talking about understanding and changing things, being a fucking dick, being a little bitch about other people's opinions isn't the way to convince people to be on your side. So, fuck that kid.
Ms. Holloway, do you think that the history teachers here at East are biased because the government that they're running on was the one who won? Because I talked to
That's the dumbest argument I've ever heard.
All right, okay.
Miss Holloway, you're an adult.
I talked to a 15.
Let him finish.
I talked to a.
Yeah, Miss Holloway, let him finish. Don't call your students dumb because it's fucking disrespectful.
15-year military history teacher at Fort Leavenworth, and he said that the teachers are completely biased, and he told me the real story. And so do you think that...
Obviously, he has a bias as well. When you question someone about another person's bias, they're obviously going to have their own opinion, which is biased. Like, no, come on. Yeah, of course they're slanted. Look at all this information they teach you. I would never teach you this information because I don't believe in it. Bias education.
What you've heard in the history classrooms at Shawnee Mission East are a little bit skewed from what really happened.
Okay, no, because like I asked you, and if you know.
But do you know what really happened?
If I know, I asked you to tell me what really happened. I asked you that the war started beside slavery, and you couldn't do it. You just looked at me. So please tell me the whole story.
You said that before you were here.
Yeah, you came late.
Yeah, well,
I'll give her.
Okay, never mind. It's Isabel Holloway. Like, sorry to the teacher. I thought you were the one being a bitch. Never mind, it's this teenager. Listen, don't be a bitch.
Run down again if you want. You want me to?
Yeah.
Oh God, here we go. All right, so
Look at the adrenaline. She's like,
northern manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
In Britain, hang on. You got me laughing.
Let the man.
what is the point of this? Recollection of information. What? My problem is that when you like state facts and expect an implication or like assume a truth from the facts of a situation. Talk.
All right, so Britain was selling their goods in America for lower prices than the North was, right?
Okay.
So the North had 5 times more population than the South. South's main exporter was cotton and tobacco. And so the South would make most of the
Cotton.
money off shipping.
Cotton and tobacco. South cotton tobacco. Where'd they get it from? Where'd they get the cotton and tobacco from? Who was making it possible for you to have a product? Did the North want the slaves, or did they want slavery abolished? Like, maybe that's where I'm confused.
Shipping their cotton to Britain. And the North manufacturers, they made the tariff of 1825, which put an import and export tax on cotton, which would raise prices of northern goods, but it would hurt the southern economy because they would then tax the cotton that goes out to Britain. It was unconstitutional and unfair.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
You said the two major crops were what?
Cotton and tobacco.
And how did they harvest them at a high level without prices being tested? Like, what was their main way of harvesting them?
Probably slavery. The cotton.
Cool. Glad we're all on the same page. Oh my God, where'd you get that cotton from? Do I have a story for you?
I'm just asking a question. I mean, if their main two crops were cotton and tobacco, and they used free labor, so they made a lot of profit off of it. This is just economics. Then how do you take out the fact that slavery was attached?
All right, well, I have a question for Mr. Justice then.
Answer his question. Well then,
Just asking a question. I mean, if their main two crops were cotton and tobacco,
Okay.
and they used free labor, so
Yeah.
they made a lot of profit off of it. This is just economics. Then how do you take out the fact that slavery was attached?
All right, well, I have a question for Mr. Justice.
okay, so to clarify, for me, the question was, the South made a lot of money off of the free labor of black people, and that wasn't fair. So, of course, the money being made by the South was owed to the people who were doing all the motherfucking work, all the slaves. How do you remove that? How do you remove slavery from the income and increase in affluence of the South? Okay, yeah, so the South was built on the backs of free black labor. How do you remove the two? You can't. Okay.
It's then.
You have to answer the question.
You brought up an economics debate. Your argument was economics. If they made the majority of their profit off of free labor to be able to send out that cotton and that tobacco to everybody at a cheaper price and make a lot of profit because they don't have to pay the labor, then how can you detach the labor that did it?
Well, if we want to talk about labor, first of all,
Okay, if you can interrupt, then I can interrupt.
No, also I'm loving this girl playing dress up games. It feels very good. Guys, I have this conversation every day at the dinner table. Can I just like play dress up games? Jesus Christ. Hits too close to home.
They don't have to pay the labor, then how can you detach the labor that did it?
You
well,
can't.
if we want to talk about labor, first of all,
Okay, if you can interrupt, then I can interrupt.
I'm gonna go first though.
None of this matters.
Okay.
Again, to reiterate Katie's point, maybe that's what it used to stand for, but that's not what it stands for now. It's a symbol of racism. It's standing for a symbol of racism. If they're allowed to wear their Confederate
I want to hear them answer the question. Okay. One of the things that frustrates me, I get it. You're liberal. In your heart, you feel so much. You feel so much love and joy and compassion for the hardships of the black people around you. Let the white boy defending racism defend his fucking racism. Shut up. Shut up. Shh. Hear what he has to say. Wait for his defense. And then give yourself ammunition, an argument against his defense. He's never going to change his mind, but at the very least, you should be clear on what his argument is, rather than you keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. Wait.
flag?
Still is.
Am I allowed to like wear all my Nazi paraphernalia to school too?
Wait, how much Nazi paraphernalia do you have? Where did your grandpa work? Who do you know? Wouldn't that be so weird if her and her best friend showed up in the same Nazi paraphernalia?
No, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I just have a genuine question. If you were supporting it, and do you acknowledge that people are offended by it racially? Okay, so what do you have to say to the people that feel personally offended by the flag? Do you say like F them, freedom of speech, like, because that's a terrible moral compass to live by?
Say it to me. Well, just say it to me.
Wait.
Say it to me.
Yeah. Okay, but there's a...
Okay, the fact that they didn't show that girl's face, wrong. You should have shown that girl's face when she said, say it to me. And you focused on these two white girls? Again, like, who is this conversation about? Who is this conversation for? Allies, allies, allies. Who gets to speak? Who's been speaking? Who's been the defenders? And then who gets their frustration shown?
Very large percentage of people in a population and demographic that agree that it is racial. I mean, obviously, like, there's both sides that agree that it's racially.
Here's the statistics, as this little black teenager is like, hello.
Offensive. So do you just completely, like, acknowledge it and say, like, well, you know what, sucks, you guys, your history is slavery, like...
Last year, CNN took a poll across the entire nation. 57% of Americans said that the flag was not racist. That's a majority.
What you say to the people that are in this room that are personally offended by the flag.
I'm sorry that you're offended and you're misinformed about how the flag is what it really means.
All right, this kid's been having his hand up for a long time.
Okay. I really just want to bring there have been a lot of, I don't want to say personal, I want to say more of like opinion attacks on both sides, and I really want to bring it back to the center, to like what the conversation's all about. And you know, I was born in Chicago, but I could not have more Confederate blood in me. I'm directly related to Jefferson Davis. I had great uncles and, you know, grandfathers who died in that war, and you know, slave owning, and
I love it.
Really genuinely think that
We should bring it
better
back.
ways to represent what those people stood for, you know, because not all of them owned slaves. As it was stated before, a lot of the war was fought by people who weren't rich. I mean, not all of these people had, you know, owned plantations. A lot of the people who died in that war weren't slave owners, whether or not they believed in slavery. And so, I think that there are better symbols for what those people died for than the Confederate flag.
Okay.
I think.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay. We got 35 minutes in. I want to hear that one more time. And then... Also, I'm really... Thanks, Nathan.
Have more about and both sides, and I really want to bring it back to the center. I just want to bring there have been a...
Also, this is why it's so important to make sure that you are getting to the outskirts of discussions, because you don't know what someone has to say.
A lot of... I don't want to say personal, I want to say more of like a...
About how the flag is what it really means.
All right, this kid's been having his hand up for a long time.
Okay. I really just want to bring there have been a lot of... I don't want to say personal, I want to say more of like opinion attacks on both sides, and I really want to bring it back to the center, to like what the conversation's all about. And you know, I was born in Chicago, but I could not have more Confederate blood in me. I'm directly related to Jefferson Davis. I had great uncles and grandfathers who died in that war, and slave owning, and I just really genuinely think that there are just better ways to represent what those people stood for, because not all of them owned slaves. As it was stated before, a lot of the war was fought by people who weren't rich. Not all of these people had, owned plantations. A lot of the people who died in that war weren't slave owners, whether or not they believed in slavery. And so, a lot of the war was fought by people who weren't rich. Not all of these people had, owned plantations. A lot of the people who died in that war weren't slave owners, whether or not they believed in slavery. And so, I think that there are better symbols for what those people died for than the Confederate flag.
Okay.
I hope people take that into their brain, but also I really appreciated his forward sit as he started talking about the poverty class and the abuse of bodies for the benefit of people who are not those bodies. So black slaves or white slaves, you're poor and being abused by a group of people, being used and abused, who do not have your best interest in mind. I appreciate this guy. I'm gonna go for now. Goodbye.